and we're hanging out. But we had to reschedule with Apostate Prophet because he's sick. You know, he posted a video earlier today about how disease comes from nothing unless Allah grants it. You know what I'm saying? So I'm starting to put two and two together now. You know what I mean? I'm starting to put two and two together.
You got cursed by Allah.
Has to be. Welcome to MythVision, everybody. We're going to get our little intro started, and let's have fun.
Don't any of you have the guts to play for blood?
I'm your huckleberry. That's just my game.
We are MythVision. Welcome back to MythVision Podcast. Your host, Eric Lambert. Excited to hang out with you tonight for a little while. I figure, look, if Apostate Prophet's not coming through, might as well do a live anyway. I had it planned on my schedule, so I'm pretty strict about what I do with my schedule. So if ever there's a reschedule, I try to fit it in. Been reading some books, but first, let me just mention our guest who's hanging out with me, Neil, Gnostic Informant. What's up, brother?
And you are about to attain true gnosis.
Dude, we're gonna talk about some stuff. We have some stuff to talk about. You know, it's crazy. People who are watching right now are like, what's the relationship between us? You know what I mean? He's my identical twin. No, I'm just kidding. No, but Neil and I will be hanging out on the phone, and we literally should record almost every conversation we have, I feel, because there's just so many things we get into all the time. And we're on this journey, this path of figuring things out, trying to unravel what happened, what is going on, what is the truth of the situation. Right now, I'm digging into this one. I can't tell you. Well, it's not just this book. Also, there's a couple books you see on the thumbnail, but there's so many. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be able to fit all of these books that we're going to be, reading this year and getting into. And does God have a body? That's going to be a bombshell.
Yeah, I want that book. I looked on Amazon and it's for pre-order for like a month from now or something like that. So however you got that, I don't know how many strings you pulled, but you got over there.
Okay, I wish it was that easy. I really do. I'm not lying. I went on Amazon, saw the same thing you saw, and then I went on Amazon a couple of days. Like, I was checking periodically. Like, been wanting this interview with Francesca Stravakopoulou so bad, and one day I looked on Amazon. I'm in America, and it was accessible to purchase the paperback and the hard copy. And I was like, I'm getting the hard copy. I still have the Audible version that's coming in the end of January, the 25th. But nice. The hard copy, I went ahead and jumped on it. And I'm telling you, dude, while I'm laying in bed, getting ready for sleep, I'm reading this, and she is good. I'm talking, she is good, bro. She's talking about 2 meter long footprints in certain temples in the ancient world where she's standing in it. Like, her whole body, her whole like circumference of her body doesn't even take up the whole footprint. And she's like, you see the footprints she's standing in at the door of the temple of the god. And then there's this footprint meters, like, I don't know how many meters, but meters, they're using a different metric system. You know what I mean? So it's like, right. They're meters ahead, she says. And one is in front of the other, like this god's walking, and it's this giant. And she's trying to point out that this is exactly what the God of the Bible, when you go back in time, see, culture changes. The God evolves. Outside space and time. What?
Right.
Where is this again? Show me in the Bible where God is outside space and time. Oh, your philosophy has introduced this idea. Okay. Because we now realize we can't find God.
Right.
Not in space and time. We got to figure out a way to look beyond in order to find it. So anyway, I'm excited about this book. There's so much here. What's up, everybody? Kip, Dr. Kip. We are Gnostic. Melody, Jojo, what is good? Let me see. Fire Sabers. Vaguely Agnostic, Dr. Q, Charles, Gorgeous, Mr. C. I'm just looking at everybody here in the chat and saying, hey, Mr. Monster, Deb, Mr. 666. What's up? Welcome. Hold on. Micah said, do you guys think the Jews were polytheist?
Good question.
There's a couple terms here. First of all, the question, man, I know I'm being super meticulous here, but when you say the Jews, that asks a certain question. I guess it's anachronistic. I think what you're trying to suggest is the ancient Israelites, because when we use that term Jew, it's a little bit anachronistic to push it back into time. But I guess if we just had that term to mean the Israelites, that even what we would call Canaanites, we use Israelites, do you mean Canaanites? Are we going back that far?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, of course, the God and the religion itself evolved from a polytheistic one to something that has a divine council with a henotheistic, if we can use the term, if that's even a term we could use for the religion, that evolved to what today they like to say is total monotheism. But yeah.
You did a video with Dr. Kip Davis about the trickling down of polytheistic language getting into the Masoretic text itself, which is very fascinating because you could see like for example the Elohim being plural, and you see like all these like sentence structures that are like suggesting that there's more than one God being in here. Book of Job is a good example.
Yeah.
Definitely see that.
Yeah, I personally think the pantheon deity concept with the supreme God ruling on a throne makes the most sense. That's just me. That makes the most sense. And that fits. Technically, that's a polytheistic world, but the point is, don't worship any of these other divine ones, these other sons of El Elyon, the God Most High. Don't worship them, but it's okay that Israel worships Yahweh. You see what I'm saying? Like only this, and that was a son of El. So yeah.
And we know from archaeology that Yahweh was one of the many gods of that region. It wasn't just like it was just only Yahweh. Yahweh was just one of many gods. So
absolutely. His brother was Bel.
Right.
Baal.
Evil.
Yeah. And but there's this strange possible interchanging of that term that Baal is used for Yahweh in the in the Hebrew Bible. Of course, you need experts like Dr. Davis, Dr. Kip, other people to kind of like discern in the context, look at the Hebrew, consider the syntax and see what's going on in there. But yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing because it could just mean Lord, right? And you could be referring to Yahweh as your Lord or something like that. But Micah, thank you for the super chat. You didn't have to, but I really do appreciate all the support. And I just think my pick would be with the term Jews, because when we deal with, it's kind of like I found this new discovered term that I like to use, Neil, synchronic and diachronic. And these are like scholarly words, makes you feel smart. But it's this idea that over time, things evolve. And that's expected. It's totally cool that things evolve. It's what happens. When Christians say, my God is outside space and time, I'm like, okay, I get it. That's a much more sophisticated approach.
Right.
Because if you start saying God has a body and he lives somewhere in outer space on planet, he lives on planet Koloth
or in the clouds.
Yeah. You're going to have a problem. So it's a more sophisticated approach. At the same time, this God evolves and you see that evolution. That's why I say to all my friends, every Jew, every Christian, every Muslim, I'm an atheist. By definition, that doesn't mean there couldn't be something out there, deism or something couldn't be plausible. I'm not ruling that out. I'm simply saying I see the man-made fingerprints all over all of this stuff, bro. Every single bit of it. It's man-made. And I love it though. So what do you do with that? I don't know, man. I don't know.
That's a good point.
I don't know. I get excited thinking about it because I love doing this stuff. That's why I do this all the time. I'm reading books from when I wake up to go to bed. Imposter Suspense. Thank you so much for the super chat. Do you think Christians were Roman imperial cultists of the East?
Sounds like some Roman providence right there.
Yeah.
That's because I guess what he's saying is in the Roman imperial cult, their job was to sort of integrate themselves into the other cultures. For example, if they were in Egypt, they would sort of adopt an Egyptian ideology and have a temple of Isis. You know what I mean? Where the Roman cult would run that, and then even send funding out to those places. This is all in Tacitus, Suetonius. This is all the early writers talk about this. Plutarch writes about this. I guess he's suggesting in the question, is the Roman imperial cult doing this with Judaism, and that's what Christianity is? That's Roman providence. So I guess what I would say, if I was to answer that question, I would say no, not at first, but it's possible that later on, Roman elitists co-opted the movement into what became Christianity, Catholicism, but that happened centuries later. I'm not saying, I'm not even going in the first century, maybe not even in the second. I would say that's probably happened later in the third to the fourth.
It's hard to know. I take a bottom-up approach, though I don't rule out the possibility. I mean, you can't when we don't have the evidence. It's not great. The evidence we have is not like, oh my gosh, we know exactly what he ate on Wednesday over at Bob's little pagan palace. No, like it's not that evidential to know, but there's really good case that I think that what is her name? I don't know why I just lost her name. Let me pull it up here on my phone here. I did an interview with her recently about the 4 Gospels and them being written by elitists.
Oh, yeah, that's
I don't know how I cannot think of her name right now. Professor Robin Walsh.
Right.
Yeah. And
she's great. Yeah, she's great.
That is a hint if they're elitist writing these Gospels, super sophisticated literature. You know, they're not dummies. They know. But I'm reading a book too, not just Dennis, but I'm reading a book right now. And this book is by, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly, Cattell Berthelot. It's like it's spelled like Berthelot, Berthelot, something like that. She is like an expert when it comes to Jewish and Roman interaction. And she is suggesting, this is a little complex, I'll try and make it brief so you understand. Most scholarship deals with Christian Rome and Jews. Like, what were the impact between like Christian Rome and Jews are. But what about pagan Rome before Christianity? What kind of impact did that have on Jews and their thoughts and their thinking and their law? We see in the Mishnah, the Talmud, like we see impact on them. That where did this come from? And she's suggesting that pagan Rome, its political empire situation ruling over Judea and the Jews and their religion, if you will, Judaios, if you will, whatever you want to say that means, Jews or the Jewish religion and their culture and their heritage, whatever, had a major impact. And how much of an impact she's starting to like uncover and say everything from the way they'd convert people, like conversion rules, adopting people into the family of God by Abraham's adoption and stuff. We see this hinted at in the New Testament. And we know the Romans adopted anyone. It didn't have to do with your lineage, genealogy, etc. It was more about obeying the law of the land, obeying law under the Roman jurisdiction and whatnot. And that influenced to Jewish thinking, how much impact. Then you have your Burrow Collins. I always mess her name up. Mrs. Collins, John J. Collins' wife, who thinks the Imperial cult played a much bigger role in the gospel development of Jesus.
Right.
That there might be some more stuff going on there.
Dr. McDonald wrote an amazing book called Christianizing Homer, Homer, the Odyssey, Plato, the Acts of Andrew by Dennis McDonald. Now, in that book, I was actually just reading it, by the way. I was flipping through it because I want to have him back on, and I'm trying to get more of his ideas before I have him back on because I want to ask him more stuff. He's amazing, by the way. But anyways, in this book, he lays out that the Greeks were the Greeks of the Eastern, like in Turkey and that's like Syria, people living in that region. They were trained to write by copying Homer and the way it's written. And that's sort of how they were brought up in their schools.
Yeah.
He also brings up like a lot of the mimesis happening in the New Testament looks like a classic example of how these writings were brought up, like were done by copying old classics like Homer and Virgil and Ovid's Metamorphoses, stuff like that. So it's not that crazy to think that
it's not.
The New Testament Gospels are so sophisticated. People who say it's illiterate bullshit, come on, dude, look at it. It is so sophisticated because what it's doing is it's taking the Old Testament and it's turning these mini allegories of the Old Testament into this New Testament.
I don't even know necessarily if they have to be allegories. Okay,
right.
So like, so even if they were literal or whatever, like without throwing out the, let's not get stuck in the situation of doing what, let's say, Philo might do, is allegorize the Old Testament. Some of the stuff may not be allegory, but it became an interpretation of that. The same thing with what the Greeks did with their epics. They allegorize and then they run into problems. But
what I'm saying is you can see in the New Testament where they're drawing these stories of Jesus, where they're drawing it from the Old. It's to mirror the Old, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's a very sophisticated document to be able to do that in that time period. It wasn't just a bunch of homeless people in the desert writing on papyrus. This was done somewhere by some sort of sophisticated people. That makes sense.
100%. I mean, I think it's just stupid to think that they're not sophisticated. In fact, to be literate in that time required intelligence. And I mean, it really, it's not that they're just writing like chicken scratch, like a third grader. You're reading stuff that we're mining and realizing they had technique to this. This is really interesting stuff. So as an atheist, I value, and I say that just because it's like too often I have a criticism for my people who think like me that don't believe in a God, and they just throw it all out like it's stupid ridiculous. I really think when you come to understand it, you'll value it for literature. That doesn't mean believing it ontologically. Now, if you are thinking ontologically this is true, and you think, well, no, I think this is a ridiculous paradigm to hold to ontologically, okay, that's a different story. But just acting like it's just swipe of a hand, ridiculous, everything's stupid. No, I think it's very sophisticated. And the way that they did this, the same way I would value Homer, or I would value any ancient literature, I would value it. And I think we need to find a way to create a balance like that. And that's why I do this at MythVision. You know what I mean?
And it's awesome to look at Ovid and Virgil and Homer and the Bible, because it reminds you where we were at in that time. Even if you hate it all, even if you think slavery's horrible,
of course,
the way they live is patriarchy, all that stuff. But it's a reminder of how far we've come from the old cultures.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, just so everybody knows, I am going to open up the door, allow people to come hang out, and join in. I won't too long tonight, but I'm just looking at the time. My camera is right here, so I got to see behind it. I'm going to open up the doors here. We'll do a hangout, and I hope you guys are having a wonderful 2022. Let's try and make it great. Let's go out with a bang. Thank you for that super chat, Imposter. Also, we have Hanny joining us. I've got an echo, Hanny. All right, hold on.
Oh.
That's better. There we go.
Is that better? Hello. Hey, Derek and Neil. How are you?
How's it going,
Welcome, man? Welcome, my friend. We're hanging out. I'm just going to grab these super chats if that's cool. And then we're just hanging out. So there's nothing scripted here. We're not sticking to a script. But whenever someone super chats, man, keeps me going, keeps doing what I'm doing, I always value that. So Uber, thank you so much for the super chat. For your incredible performance, Derek, on the Dr. Josh Erica is the flood of Genesis historical?
That was me.
That was okay. Gnostic. Oh, he's talking about my shotgun and my redneck. Man, I came out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that was amazing. All
right. Jeff Gordon reruns. I'll be right back now. Okay. Oh, man.
You could have been an actor. You look like Leonardo DiCaprio a little bit too. You could have been an actor.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Seriously. Hey, Uber, rock on. I planned on doing more last night, man. I was so worn out. Neil was going to have me come on with Dr. Price on and do something too. I was going to do something. I didn't know what I was going to do.
No, you should just stick with that character, just like Dr. Josh does the Kent Hovind thing. That's your signature character. You need to just roll with that and just keep making that character better.
I mean, I've got the shotgun. I have the suit. I used to do construction, so I was looking for anything like a construction worker, and then roll with the punches, man. But thanks, Uber. Appreciate it. And then a couple more here. Flamio, I never expected you both in the same live stream without it being a highly promoted simulcast. Love you both. Thank you so much. Love you too. Really appreciate the support. I planned on getting actually Neil's story at some point just to find out your path, what happened. you sound like me, man. We both went through the addiction to drugs, to religion. I mean, you were hardcore on that podcast for your church. So,
Yeah.
And then of course, Haney, is it Haney? Am I pronouncing that correct?
Oh, Henny.
Yeah, so I want to get yours of course too. We talked about having you come on to discuss things. You're big into science. So like that's he knows more about the science side of things than I probably ever will. I don't know.
I'm actually philosophy and logic trained, but I got into science later on. But philosophy is my main academic discipline.
Nice. Oh, someone just froze.
Yeah, Derek's a bit stunned.
One way that you're trained in philosophy. Are you really that trained?
He's coming back.
Hopefully.
That's funny.
Let's see what the next super chat says. He's got to be coming back. Maybe his camera turned off or something.
Yeah, it's buffering.
So the next person actually said, I never expected you both. That's the one you just read. I love Neil's interview with Rabbi Tobias. And don't worry, Bill Castle, he's going to bring this up on the screen. I'm just keeping it going a little bit. I love Neil's interview with Rabbi Singer on how the writers of the New Testament changed the original text to support Christianity. I must have watched it at least 20 times. Wow, dude. That, by the way, that was a fire episode. I watched it myself. I don't watch myself. I just had to hear I just had to hear Rabbi Tobias say what he said. I had to hear that again. It was so good. It was really mind-blowing stuff.
Wow. Yeah.
It's got 20,000 views already. And that was like,
wow.
It was like a week or two ago.
I must watch that at some point for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So
Derek hopefully is going to come. So I can see Derek is focusing on Islam for last couple of episodes. And it looks like he's zoning in.
Yeah, he's been switching gears and trying to get into that. There he is.
Bro.
What happened, dude?
I went through a wormhole. I have an echo coming in.
Went through a wormhole.
I don't know why it does that sometimes. Maybe it's when I first get on, it does that. No, seriously, I don't know what happened. You guys, I think Henny was talking and then it went.
Yeah, the last thing he said to you was, I'm trained in philosophy. And you were like,
you got froze from without you're actually genuinely stunned.
As long as my face wasn't like. Oh man, thank you. Sorry, did you guys already talk to Bill?
Yeah, I did mention. I read his out, and I said thank you for that. Yeah, Bill, thank you, dude. Thank you.
So this is the thing. Let me go ahead and lay it out. Put the drama out on the table, right? So being an Orthodox Jew, he has a perspective. He's gonna pay attention to certain details, whether they're factual or not. He's gonna notice things, and he's noticed things that other scholars like Elaine Pagels have come to conclusions on, realizing there's anti-Semitic stuff, if you will, anti-Semitism. Hopefully that's not anachronistic in the New Testament. He knows the New Testament quite well. Now, whether he's right is a different question. I'm interested in critical analysis, right? I don't have him on to be critical of Judaism when I have him on to talk about New Testament. And you might go, that's hypocrisy. I get people do this all the time. There are people who don't like me for this very reason.
Right.
Why don't you have Rabbi on to attack Rabbi? Let me answer this really quickly. Rabbi will not come on if I attack Rabbi. Do we want to have him come on at all or not? Some people go, that's hypocrisy. If you've watched my channel enough, trust me when I say the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, all that gets plenty of criticism and continues to do so by me and my guests. So,
and by the way, you have Christians on all the time, and you don't attack them either.
I don't attack. No, Dale C. Allison Jr., Christian New Testament scholar. I don't attack him at all.
Yeah.
I tell him, I disagree on things, but I love him. And this same thing with Rabbi. I am who I am.
Yeah.
You don't expect me to be Aaron Ra. Don't expect me to be hardcore anti-theistic to a point where I'm just ready to attack. That's not who I am. Yeah. And I'm not changing. If you don't like that, I'm not your channel. And that's okay. I swear I don't mind if you don't want to follow or watch or anything. It doesn't hurt my feelings. In fact, it would probably be beneficial because it's less of a headache on your part to have to deal with someone like me. Trust me, my wife has to deal with me. I have to hear about it all the time.
Derek, I think it gets very old and very tired very quickly. The sort of the shouting over people, and you don't get anywhere really. You got to have a discussion if you're serious about finding the truth.
I'll tell you this. I did an interview one time with Rabbi, and that's a great point you're bringing up. I did an interview with Rabbi, and I had some critical questions that was talking about some text variants that were brought up recently by Dr. Kip Davis about Deuteronomy 32, where there's this issue in the Dead Sea Scrolls where it's saying like to the gods, and it's like plural deities, and it's really something that our Masoretic text, our typical Septuagint, like does not have in it, but the Dead Sea Scroll does. And I asked him this, and when we got done with the interview, I love Rabbi. If I see him in Israel one day, I'll hang out with him like he's a friend. But he asked me after the episode, Derek, will you please delete that? I don't want that. I don't want that to go public. I'm not interested in that. And I said, yeah, no problem. No problem. And these were very heavy Hebrew Bible type questions. It got into some of the things Orthodox Jews believe. I'm not just saying this. He asked me to please take it down. And I said, yes, sir. No problem. I have no problem doing that because I'm not here to embarrass. That's not my goal. Even when I interviewed whack job, crazy Jesus from Australia, who pisses me off because he was so passive aggressive in the emails later on. He really triggered me and upset me because he was treating one of my friends, like bullying him to try and psychoanalyze him and act like he's this horrible individual. I can't even tell you. It goes on, the whole thing.
And he asked you nicely, and
he asked me politely. I'm like, of course I won't do that. In fact, I've had Christian, get this, I got to balance the odds. Christian scholar Ian Mills, who's a PhD now, Dr. Ian Mills, asked me to please remove 2 videos. I drove to him. It wasn't like I got to sit at home and interview him. I drove. It took time, gas, energy, money, all of that. I drove to him and I interviewed him in person, and he said, would you please take down 2 of these videos? And I said, yes, sir. Is there any reason?
It's also important to note that doesn't mean we're exposing them for wanting to not be out there.
No,
it's because people say stuff and then they change their minds on things, or they might have said something that, I said that wrong.
It wasn't even about, in Ian's case, it wasn't about he changes his mind. It was he's looking for a job, okay? Exactly. And he's looking for a job in a particular area of work that if they saw it, they wouldn't want it. These are Christian churches, right? So like if they saw him say some of this more critical scholarship stuff, it might hurt his reputation and not allow him to get the job. He asked me to please remove it so he can provide for his family.
Right.
That's even a better reason to that's for sure. Yeah.
And I respect anyone. I don't care about their ontology. Like I'm interested in scholarship and interested in those things. Do I think Rabbi goes too far? Possibly on Paul. I kind of like Paul. He doesn't like Paul. I kind of like Paul personally. I in some ways. Okay. I don't know. We have a difference of opinion on these things, but I get his insight. And that's all I got to say about that. But if people who have a problem with that in the audience, if you ever hear people who do that, I will have Rabbi on in the future. If you ever hear people do that, like just block them. Honestly, like they're not even worth, if they're in the chat being harassing about this and that, don't even pay attention to it because you heard it from the horse's mouth on why I do what I do and who I am.
Right. And I like to, when I have a guest on, I like to be in there. I like to become a chameleon to that person. It's just how I am. Not everyone's like this. Like if I'll have Richard Carrier on, I'll become a mythicist for an hour because I want to know. I want to know what he's thinking. I want to get on his level. Then I can have Dr. Bart Ehrman on. All of a sudden, I'm in his level. I'm not a mythicist. I'm a historicist. Right. People say I'm a hypocritical for that. But what I'm doing is I'm trying to have a good episode and trying to like make bounce off each other so we can have a good show. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to get I'm trying to give people the spotlight so they can, they can tell us what they think. And
can I also add something to that I think you would appreciate me saying?
Yeah.
Are you an expert?
No,
you're not. I'm not either. Right. And when I have these people on, now I've gotten to a point in my research where I'll say on mythicist shows, I'm a historicist. Like I'm open to that. That doesn't mean I'm antagonistic while he's presenting mythicism. In fact, I try to mine out the best I can out of these guys and girls. and in between, whatever you want to identify yourself as. I try to mine the best out of these people because I'm like you. But I got to a point, right, where I now think the evidence points in a certain direction more than it does in another one. That's for me. You know what I mean? You may disagree at the end of the day, and that's fine.
You have a slight echo that's popping up when you talk. Just want to mention that. I don't know if you can.
Okay.
Maybe we should mute ourselves when Derek's talking or something.
Yeah, or vice versa. I don't know.
Yeah.
And
it wasn't that bad, but I just want to throw that out there before you go on.
Dude, welcome in the chat. Look, I'm a little late to recognizing everyone. Spartan Theology, my friend, Man, Bear, Pig, what is up? Normalizing Atheism, God equals the square root of -1. All of you, good to see you. Medalia, good to see you in here. Jojo, of course, with the fan art. Love the fan art. Always always showing love. And I think Jojo is a Muslim. I don't think he's like a strict type, but I think he's a Muslim. I mean, I'm friends with everybody. So thank you, Oflamia, for that. Bill Castle, did we get this? I love Neil's interview. Yes, we did. Just catching everybody. Spartan said, who's the new guest you're most looking forward to? Right now, definitely hands down, and this is a wrestling match. You guys are going to laugh at me. Francesca Stravakarpulu or Cattell Bertholo, which I just found out about, and I'm reading her book. I'm already like 150 pages in, and it's just, when I say scholarly material, I mean like any antiquity source possible. She's like pulling out to show, did pagan Rome have influence on Jews and the mind and the laws and everything that Jews had? So much so that there were times where Jews went against Torah on certain issues in order to maintain their laws. And where did those issues come out of? Roman law. And there's a lot to it. So I think Francesca, because she's so, this is more poetic as well as scholarly. It's not just dense scholar stuff. You're muted, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Let me just say something about Dr. Francesca. I watched her. My introduction to her was someone else interviewing her on a big show in UK somewhere, some talk show over there, and she comes out the gate just with heavy hitting facts about the Old Testament. She's like, "Yeah, David probably wasn't real. He's probably made up." And they all, by the way, they all have daddy issues. I'm like, oh, I would pay to have her on my show. I'm telling you, I'm trying to get her on sometime, but I don't know. We'll see if it ever happens. But you're so lucky to get her to come on, man. She's one of the best. I think she's one of the best scholars out there.
But don't you guys agree, unlike empirical science where you can test a hypothesis and come up with a solution that you can repeat, history is one of the most difficult things to go through, because you're stitching the past as forensic science, and you're not just trying to understand what happened in the past, but what people were thinking when they were thinking what they were thinking. It is almost impossible, and that's why you get all these colorful different viewpoints that worth entertaining, because if you're going to shut somebody as a crackpot, you'll never hear these wonderful stories. That's how we get our comic books and superheroes somehow.
Well put. No, I agree with you. I think knowing exactly is probably impossible in most cases, to know that exactly. I like to try to wonder what they may have been thinking and what they thought, what they meant when they wrote this, what were they conveying, what were their beliefs. And I bet it was far more superstitious than we realize. And we're pretty superstitious today, but I wonder if it was that much more. I don't know. It's something to think about, especially when they weren't as, at least in these pockets we're dealing with, we're probably not as scientific minded in their thinking.
So, I mean, when you take the literal meaning of things, the 10 Commandments, and the very first commandment where Yahweh was saying, do not take other gods before me. If you understand the language here, that's sort of an admission there are other gods. Unlike Islam, where it says there are no other gods but me. So that's a declaration of monotheism. But that's why the Jewish religion is always conflated with polytheism, at least in the very humble beginning of Judaism. And it's a very clear statement there. Do not take any other gods before me. Did not say that there are no other gods but me. It's a different story.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. It's evolved. And I think as the philosophy has evolved. Like, notice most Muslims today, and you know because you're an ex-Muslim. Most Muslims today, their whole argument and their apologetic typically is philosophical. They're trying to get you with philosophy. And then if they can impress you with somehow mathematics existed before we existed as humans to calculate and know that numbers existed, then all of a sudden there had to be a divine mind behind that. And what was his name? Allah. Here you go. Like that's the stuff that gets me. And I'm like, all of these guys who philosophically get into this and find themselves becoming Muslims, are they going into text criticism? Do they not know that they can hold to a philosophical deism or philosophical theism without being a Muslim? Like, it does not require going to this ancient book. Look for problems in your stuff before you join. This is the thing. Like, I learned that from leaving a cult.
But you know, Derek, nobody debates the text. Everybody who debates God at this point, they're going back to almost the God of Spinoza.
Right.
It's the God of the initial conditions and the Big Bang, and suddenly they're into.
That's a good point. And at the end of the day, I have no problem with someone wanting to have a Spinoza, like or something even more than that. But the point is usually these are people who are at one point Christian, maybe became atheist or something, or who knows, they jump into these things and they go, why are you who you are today, Derek, a skeptic, an atheist? Why are you this way? And I go, well, I'm looking at all these texts and I see the fingerprints of men. Like I see human man-made, right? I see man-made. That doesn't mean that they didn't glean nature and observe fascinating facts about nature, and some of these observations are factual, some of them aren't, right? Like definitely cosmology and things like that we look at. You got flat earth, solid dome heavens in ancient Near East. Things developed, the science developed, ideas and thinking changed. But when you look at these texts and you find flaws or issues, that's the problem, is they're starting philosophically, just using one example. They get to it, and then they just have to keep the text being inerrant, infallible, and that's what I see happening a lot. And I'm like, what the heck, man? Why aren't we being critical? So one more super chat, Mr. Monster, and I think we're caught up on super chat. No, we're not.
We have one more, yeah.
One more. Mr. Monster says, how much evidence do you think we have for King Solomon being an actual historical person?
This is back to what Dr. Francesca was saying, that there's really not a lot archaeologically wise, but the text makes it very clear that he was basically had all these wives and concubines all over the land, and that he was the most famous person of all. I've heard some people try to say that Homer mentions him. There's a king in Homer, King like Solomini, or very similar, but that's not proven. That's just a wild speculation. But I've heard people try to make that claim that Homer is referencing a King Solomon. By the way, that King Solomon from Homer's books is not in Judea, it's in Turkey. So it's like, no, that's not true. But other than that, there's really not a lot to say that this person did. Like, there's not a lot of like physical evidence other than the Bible.
Yeah, there's even problems in the Solomon narrative. So this yesterday, Russell Gamirkan that I had on was showing that in his books, he writes about this, that Shalmaneser the Third or something had, like, he was a massive rich person who had all of these chariots of gold, and you know, the list that you see in the Bible that it says Solomon has, like, it almost details very much identical lists from Shalmaneser. And you kind of have to ask yourself, like, if that's fictitious and utilized and applied to Israel, because you want to beef up your narrative. You know, if you're going to write a really good story, even if it's historically has a kernel, you want to beef it up. If there was a King David, right? For example, Joel Baden thinks there was.
Right.
And I don't close off that. I'm not closed off at all. He thinks there probably was, and that this King David ruled like a small, you know, it wasn't no kingdom, but it was definitely in Judea, he believes. And it wasn't a united monarchy type of situation. It was probably down in the south. But that he thinks that these narratives have been beefed up. Is Solomon the same way? And how much can we know once you've done that to someone's narrative? How much can we know? The only reason I think he thinks that King David has validity is when he compares the accounts. One has David look like impeccable and flawless, and then the other one has him like actually do some dirt.
Right.
Really looks bad. And so he thinks, based on the dating, one of them looks old or newer, which is the one that makes him look good. And the older one makes him look kind of like, here's a human who has flaws.
Yep.
Right. So he thinks that there's a real original historical David.
The thing is, with the word mythology, people think of the word mythology as things that never really happened. It's mythology. It's a legend. But actually, mythology comes from the word mythos in Greek, which means a story. So I'm kind of convinced that most of these stories at least have had somebody at the very beginning of the story, and then the whole thing got exaggerated later on. But it must have been someone, somehow, at that point, exhibiting certain characteristics, and then it gets built up upon that, and it gets really exaggerated later on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that typically happens. For those who were joining in at the bottom, I saw you. I was just finishing my sentence. I was going to have you add. Feel free to join back. I'm going to post the link again just so everybody knows. I'm opening up the room. So
one more though, just so you know, just so you don't.
Yeah. I'm going to get it. I'm just join here. Boom.
Oh, you actually have two more.
Okay. Let's jump on this here then. Thank you, Mr. Monster. And I'm going to pop you guys in. Try and mute your mic whenever, if you don't mind, just so we don't get the echo. Indo says, about biblical slavery, was it really just consensual work to pay off debt? What was it like historically? Because scripture makes it sound bad. Well, anyone who's looked into this, I even know some evangelical scholars that, accept the idea that there are various versions, if you will, of the systematic slavery in the ancient world. And no, it wasn't all pretty. And no, it wasn't everybody worked at a local KFC to pay off debt so they can live and survive. Yes, that probably was majority because there was systematic slavery, right? A lot of empires lived and thrived off of that. But there was chattel, there was sex slavery, there was really ugly stuff in the ancient world. And so, yeah, when it comes to the idea, there are a lot of apologists who want to say it was only indentured servitude. That way they can get away from the ugliness of some of the stuff. But at the end of the day, I know Christians who go, no, we accept that for what it is. It was an ugly world. And that over time, things change. Right. And someone asked me, like, how would you view God if that's the case? And I said, well, I'm throwing this out there. This doesn't mean this is factual or this is the accurate representation. But I said, I could see, if you wanted to make a case for open theism, that God's like working out things, right? Like if you were trying to hold on to a theistic world, like he's trying to work out things throughout history. God's learning with us, trying, that was a bad move. Let's not do that anymore. Let's do this. That to me, but if a God who knows the end from the beginning, absolutely knows every act and is endorsing or condoning some of these things that are happening, that's tough for me. Sorry, I'm adding another person in. Please mute if you don't mind. I got an echo. Okay, cool. So anyone else want to comment on that super chat? I got you in here, and then feel free to chat.
But if God is learning with us, there goes omniscience. The claim of omniscience is out of the window.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I partially agree with you, and I partially disagree with you. I think you're right, though, that too many people try and say that all the slavery in the Bible was indentured servitude. I don't think that's the case. But then again, I disagree with the point that you just do away with omniscience. If
he's saying if it's open theism. He's saying if open theism is.
Gotcha.
Yeah, he's not saying that.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, I think you're right about that, actually. So I misunderstood, but yeah.
No problem.
But I actually think something else is going on. So you may have been talking about Jay when you said I've actually talked to evangelical Christians. Were you talking about Jay Cavallero, for example?
Yep, Jay.
Okay. Yeah, I actually interviewed Jay yesterday. I haven't posted it yet because I'm working on some projects that are about to come out. I think you'd be very interested there. But here's something interesting you guys to look into. And feel free to push back on this, okay? Because this is my view. I've never seen it developed by anybody else. But, I actually think something else is happening in Leviticus chapter 25. If you want to move on to something like a less dense topic, that's fine as well. But if you're interested, like I can present it if you would like. This up to you.
I mean, if you want to briefly make the point of what you think's going, sure. I don't have that open, or I'm not ready to go into like any specific details. But maybe if it's something that's complex and it's a detailed thing you're wanting to make a case about, maybe we do a follow-up sometime and have the discussion, and I can bring on the scholars who are, actually in that field that are looking at these things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. Well, so you probably, okay. So I think what's happening is when it says that you can't have Hebrew servants or slaves, right? It's saying that it says because you can't treat them ruthless, but you can get your slaves or servants from the nations around you. I think what's happening there is the entire chapters about redemption according to the land that was allotted, and so the foreigners don't have land allotments because they're from another clan. That's why this goes back to Deuteronomy chapter 32, and so you can't. But here's the thing: is I don't think that the foreigners are actually owned because they're called landed property, and God says that He owns the land, so the Israelites can't even sell the land. So that's pretty much what I think is going on here: is that the Israelites don't actually own the land, and they actually don't own the servants as property. But the word property means something more like inheritance that you are to steward over, or something like that. Yeah. But
yeah, that'd be something to look into further, for sure. Check out, because I definitely would want to. This just popped up out of nowhere, and getting into that particular pericope and trying to deal with what's going on, where this is happening, etc. That's a whole nother thing. Maybe we could do a follow-up show and talk about it.
yeah, but I agree with you though that people do try to downplay the significance there, because there is actual it was normal for a lot of people to that their kids were slaves. The word I think it was like Nethinims or something. That's the word used for young lad is also used for servants, because it was just so normal for the same rod used for servants is used for children and so forth. It's just it was a time where survival. So.
It was just the way we humans did things. It's just how it is, and Jay, that's why I use Jay. I mean, Jay's, he's studying this, but also he's an evangelical Christian, which is why it's best that I go to him rather than, Dr. Joshua Bowen or this, the last person a lot. And I'm not speaking for you. You know what I'm talking about when I say the extreme fundamentalist Christians will not listen to you if you are agnostic, skeptic, atheist. You just don't believe. That's typically what they do, is not listen. So it's better to got a slight echo here. What's up, Camel?
Hey,
how you doing?
Phoenix Queen.
Yes, hello there.
Hello. But yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. Even my friend here, Converse Contender, knows what I'm saying. And we may disagree ontologically, but I'm sure we can find a lot where we agree on many things. Indo asks, and I'm getting the super chats, what is the sketchiest problem in the Bible? If you're not talking, just mute the mic. That way we don't have to deal with it. Lucius, welcome. I like to call you Ancient of Days, if you don't mind, just because you have the idea of like a deity picture or something. I had to mute you because I had a little background noise on your end. And anyway, who wants to swing first?
All right, I'll jump in. I just wanted to give someone else the mic because I was talking the whole time. But since no one's talking, I'll jump in. For me, it's obvious. It's the story of Elijah and sending bears to go kill children because they call them baldy. That is just the sketchiest, oddest, weirdest, evilest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. It even caused Marcion, early church father, to condemn it and say this is not the God of the New Testament. And I think a lot of that is just, I think that sticks out to me as the sketchiest of all. Anyone else?
Yeah, on that topic, sorry. If somebody has an interlinear from, I'm at Chick-fil-A, so or I can't look, but if anybody has an interlinear from, I just mentioned, I believe there's the word Nethinims that means like slave and young person. Yeah, if you look that up, I believe that's the same word that's used for these children in this bear story. And yeah, somebody would look it up for me, but I think that what's happening here is not year-old kids. So I think these are like young,
not what?
maybe sold. Yeah, sorry, I don't think they're like 10-year-old kids. I think these are probably like young.
I think we lost him.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, he
Oh,
broke
not
up.
yet.
Sorry about that. I think these are more like young soldiers or like young servants to like maybe a foreign army or a foreign country or something like that. You know, I don't know if they're actually children, like in that
Yeah,
sense. I mean,
I've never delved deep, right, to try and hear what kind of like, let's not make this kids, but I can imagine that if it looks ugly, there's going to be a way of trying to make it not look ugly. That's typically what happens. And I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm saying I've heard, like, what do we do in Jephthah's daughter, right? That's a sketchy place for me, that the sacrifice to Jephthah. And I feel like the best example that one could try to do to defend the situation in Judges 11 is get out of it by saying, he never burned her. She just was a virgin the rest of her life, which just, to me, it just does not read that way to me. It's like I'm looking at it and it seems like he definitely kept his end of the deal. In fact, she said, do to me as you oathed, right? Like, go ahead and sacrifice me. But one can go, I don't see the words of Yahweh anywhere in Judges 11, so Yahweh didn't approve it. This is all just coming from Jephthah's own tongue.
Well, yeah,
but this is in the text.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm just making the point, like, this is in Holy Scripture, and it seems that this is...
I looked it up. It says the word is anarim, and it is used in the context for lads, children, youths, young boys. So, I mean, you could. I mean, look, I'm not an expert. That's just a quick search from. I'm on Bible Hub right now. That's what it is. This could be wrong, obviously. I mean, you could be right. I haven't heard that though.
The only cop out on this one that I've heard is that it's an allegory. The 42 kids represent a numerical symbolic number, and the two bears are Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, celestial astrology.
Oh,
so that's the only cop out I've heard that people, try to say.
Judges 7:10 does have that word for servant.
Yep, sure does.
Same thing.
Right. But does it mean that? Does it mean that? I mean, I guess
it could be like altar boy in that situation. Who knows?
Sorry, you guys. I had a little bit of a lag, so I'm sorry if I interrupted you guys.
Oh, you're good.
Lucius, did you have something? Did you wanted to say?
Just fine listening at the moment.
Just hanging out. Awesome. Well, thanks for tuning in.
I've got something to say on the Old Testament and the New Testament. And the Old Testament is the story, the very original story of the Garden of Eden, and the second tree that God was so afraid that Adam would eat from, and it becomes immortal just like him, and suddenly say, oh, bloody hell, we need to do something about that tree and the flaming sword and that beast to guard the tree. That was very sketchy for me. And the second one was the demonic position of a man where Jesus cast the demons. I think there were 7 or 8, and end up entering a herd of swine, and then end up drowning. And I thought, being all powerful, it means you can cast demons away. But it seems that sort of positioning, casting in the horror story genre still persists, which is you always need a host. So you need a host for the demons to go into, and even Jesus himself, the Almighty, could not just evaporate these demons, but they had to go somewhere else, and somebody else had to be the victims of these evil forces. So not all powerful for me.
Yeah, I actually agree with Derek on this one. I think that Judge's story is probably the worst of the woman. If you're talking about the one, it's like basically like a parallel of Sodom, the story of Sodom, where the men of the city of Benjamin come out to take them, and they give them the female servant. Mm-hmm. Is that the one you're talking about?
Are you talking about me?
Yeah, if that's the one Derek was referring to.
Yeah, Judges 11.
Is that the one where he gives the female servant to the crowd of Benjamin? No,
that would be that. Are you talking? I don't know about the crowd of Benjamin. I know that Sodom and Gomorrah story. That's a different one.
That's the worst story. Yeah, that's actually the worst story. It's a parallel kind of to that same thing. What happens is the men of Benjamin come to this guy, this Levite, and he has a concubine with him, and he gives her over to them when they come to get him.
Oh, that's right.
Sorry
I
if I'm
remember this.
breaking up, but he actually gives them over, and they really like mess her up pretty bad. But that's really. But at the end of Judges, it explains like in those days, everyone lived by their own standards, or everybody did according to their own judgments. It says.
Yeah, I was speaking of Jephthah, and
I got
Jephthah,
earlier on. Yeah, sorry.
Jephthah was making an oath to God that if he could defeat the enemies of Israel, that he would literally make a burnt offering of the first thing that walked through the threshold of his door.
Oh, right.
And it was his own daughter. And he said, woman, he like tore his clothes and said, you have undone me. Like, do you understand what I have to do now? Which, whether this happened or not, that's a whole nother question. But the point is that he had to follow through with the oath he made to Yahweh. And rather than Yahweh intervening and saying, no, the whole direction is that he sacrificed his daughter as a burnt offering.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what else I thought about? It's pretty messed up is the whole entire Exodus story of Pharaoh going out and having the firstborns being killed when his own self his heart itself was hardened by God itself to do to sort of like not listen to Moses. So all of this stuff is happening not because of Pharaoh, but because of Pharaoh's heart being hardened by God, which means God's doing all of this.
Well, there is a place just to show a little apologetics back as an atheist. Okay, there's a place where it says that Pharaoh hardened his own heart, but
he hardened his own heart. Yeah.
There's two places, and where you want to go, it's like, how do you want to take this? Is God all powerful?
There's also like 4 or 3 different words used for the hardenings of God on Pharaoh's heart, and they each mean something different.
Interesting.
But you guys feel free to stop me. I don't mean to every time something's brought up be like, oh, here's the answer or whatever. I just do it naturally.
Yes, you do, converse.
But I was going to say, regardless, I mean, even if it's Pharaoh's choice, let's say he chose to do so. What is that to do with the innocent poor children? There's nothing to do with them. It's crazy. And again, God's omniscience in display again, because the blood had to be the signals on the doors for the spirit of God or the angel of God to know where the children's of the Egyptians should be, not the Jews. It's a bit weird for me.
It says, I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and though I multiply my signs and wonders in the land of Egypt, Pharaoh will not listen to you. It says
technically, if you go back, right, you're going to see prophecies where it's like, he's like, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, Joseph. I'm going to take Joseph.
Yeah.
I'm going to take your children and make them slaves.
It says that Pharaoh hardened his own heart
Egypt
first, and then it's debated whether, what does it mean by God? Oh, sorry.
But it's God's.
You are delayed bad, converse. You are delayed real bad, bro.
But here's the thing, though. It's God saying, I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart. It's not someone else saying it. It's him saying that.
Yeah.
That's where, to me, it's
right.
That's pretty obvious.
And I wanted to point out there's spots where Pharaoh hardens his own heart. I said that on purpose because I already know that that's the comeback to say, well, you can't, but don't blame God all the way. Because I mean, you gotta blame Pharaoh. But what I'm trying to get at is if you go back in the narrative, he tells Jacob and Joseph, like, I'm going to take your children and I'm going to put them into slavery for 430 years. And then I'm going to set them free. I'm going to be the one who does it. And so, in that day and age, I suspect when we don't think the way we do today, here, Converse, if you can mute, man, because your mic's making a lot of noise. Like today's age and time, the way we are, like looking back, we don't see that and go, yeah, I guess. Because as a Christian, I went right over that. That had no moral issue to me. I was like, God, he did this all to show his glory. Yes. And I'm thinking now, when I look back, I'm like, dude, he made them slaves. Like for 430 years. That means many generations of people were absolute slaves from the time they were born to the time they died. You didn't live too long in that time. That was their entire life's existence. But if you have this cosmic perception and you want to be in God's mind, I guess this doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what happens on earth. It doesn't matter who's burned alive. It doesn't matter 42 kids chewed, or if they're 42 servants, or they're 42 enemies. Doesn't matter. The bears are going to chomp them up. It's okay because you're on God's team. And every atrocity isn't an atrocity as long as you're on God's team and you realize no matter what happens, what he says is right and what he does is right. He can do whatever he wants. You see what I'm saying? Camille, I want to hear from you because we boys, you know how we do.
Hey, you know, I'm popping in because I just got off work. You see, I'm in my car and actually I have the video on right now because I was driving. But it's like saying God is good all the time and all the time he is good. Okay, so what makes him good? If making people into slaves for over 400 years and then having them leave said slave area and then for them to wander in the wilderness for another 40 years because of their sin and their idol worship, how is that making him good? One of the things I struggled with was actually the virgin birth. I mean, some people, they bypass that and some people are just like, well, you know, what about it? I mean, back in that day, if we look historically, a woman who was already betrothed, I should say a young girl, was already betrothed. She's living with the betrothed's family and she turns up pregnant and it's not her husband's. That would get her killed. She would have been stoned. But a being of light comes down and say, hey, it's okay because God impregnated you and, you know, you should be fine with this. I'm sorry. I guess this is my modern current brain thinking that, no, that's not okay. So that was one of the things I looked at and the Bible was like, yeah, this isn't okay. And then going in to read the Tanakh, I still couldn't get past, let us make man in our own image. Who is us?
Right.
You know, where's this other us at? You know, where's this other being? Are you talking about the Holy Spirit? You know, Shekinah glory that's supposed to fall down? I don't think you're talking about Jesus. So where is this us problem at? And I know you brought up the story of Jeffrey's daughter. That was another one that I did struggle with. But yeah, it's a lot of contradictions, and I know Christian apologists like to try to tie things together and say, well, maybe he meant this and maybe he did that. Not really that. So it's like, no, some things you can't apologize for. You can't just come up with an easy peasy solution for it because it doesn't make sense.
I want to say, obviously, I think most of us would understand that there are Christians who actually take, for example, that Genesis 1, let us make man. I thought the Trinity for a long time as a Christian. And then I found Heiser. There's a scholar named Michael Heiser who realized, no, there's a pantheon. There is a divine supreme deity, Yahweh. And then he has a pantheon of subordinate deities, if you will, that are, he's in a council. He rules like a king on a throne. They'll probably interpret this like metaphorical, which this book right here, it's like really, I'm telling you, she's awesome. But she gets into where this literature is placed in ancient Near East. These are literal, like, physical deities with hands, feet, like everything. The phallus, the whole nine. He had a wife, children, a dad, all the above. But I wasn't taught that. I was never told that. But I think as people start to become more educated, we find out, let's not make that Genesis 1 situation the Trinity. That's silly. It's not the Trinity. This is, like Michael Heiser suggesting, there is a pantheon. And I agree. I think that's the right direction.
Well, you can kind of tell in the Old Testament, too, with the mention of El and Yahweh. And, you know, you can kind of tell there's more than one being mentioned here. It's not the same being. And then when you get to the New Testament, you got another two beings thrown into the mix. Because I don't remember reading in the Old Testament, and if I'm wrong, somebody can point that out to me, about the Holy Spirit being there.
So there is places where the God's Holy Spirit's mentioned, but it's not. It doesn't play the same role. You see it happen, of course, in a different context in the New Testament. But the Spirit of God is mentioned, of course, and there seems to be at least a binary, even in Judaism. See, a lot of Orthodox Jews would probably not want to hear this, but that there's at least a binary distinction where there's Yahweh and the angel of Yahweh, which is still Yahweh. There's this like 2-in-1 package deal here in the Hebrew Bible. You could find this. So when the anti-Trinitarians come on the scene that are monotheistic using the Hebrew Bible, they're not really accepting this binary thing going on. There's all sorts of ways of explaining it. But I was just going to say, like, when you mentioned the contradiction thing, there's always someone trying to fit these together. And I think that package deal of trying to fit these things together is a late anachronistic concept that really isn't letting the books speak for themselves and let the literary imagination of that author speak for itself, because they want it to be a literal, historical, detailed, actual, this is the real account of what really happened. So we have to have this match this, because if they're two different accounts, these are problems that I think more fundamentalist Christians hold to, and even fundamentalist Jews.
But that's the thing, though. Even with a so-called historical account, there will usually be other accounts that kind of allude to the same things happening. I mean, even when you hear about the stories of Alexander the Great, you hear multiple stories, but you see a thread that goes through all of them that's quite similar. Whereas when we come to the historicity of the Bible, it's like, maybe this existed, maybe it didn't, or we're just going to put this together because, you know, we don't really know, but this is what we think we know, and this is what we're interpreting. We're leaning to our own understanding of things.
Right.
Is pretty much what everyone does.
Converse wanted to say something before he goes.
Yeah, I'm about to take off. I'll come back on in a few after I eat if y'all are still on in a little while. But
we'll probably be wrapped up by then.
Okay, sure, no worries. But I'll say, Derek, I'll give you some props, you know, because as much as I know a lot of people don't care for you, I'm not saying a lot of people, but I
just
mean, like,
say it like it is.
Well, I know there's a lot of people that do like you as well, you know, like
yeah.
Well, you know, I mean, a lot of apologists is what
I'm
mean
teasing. I know, bro. Look, there's some guys
who
do hate me.
Sure. But I will say that, like, I do feel like that you are, you've at least seen the more strong arguments like Heiser. So I'll see you sometimes when somebody brings up an argument that's really not good and say, like, oh, yeah, but Heiser points this out, or Walton points this out, or, you know, something like that. And so I give you props for that, you know.
Thanks, man.
But I do think that the one place that I think you may fall short on there is that when you give their view, that's, you know, sometimes the most coherent view, you'll say, but there's always an apologetic strategy for everything, you know.
Well, there is.
No. Yeah, that's
I mean,
true.
there is an apologetic.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
No, I was just saying there is an apologetic strategy often for most things, and some of the things don't require an apologetic. Like I guess what I'm saying is the Pantheon thing. Did you learn that growing up in church? I know I didn't. I know that was forbidden to even speak like that.
Oh no, when I had on Dr. Heiser, I told him my favorite thing he says is, I will not protect Christians from their Bible. That's my favorite thing that he says, because it's so true that in these seminaries and in churches and places, they know about a lot of these things, and they'll like to say, yeah, but do you really want to open that can of worms with them? Like, are they really going to have the time to study and look into all? Heiser's like, no, I'm not going to protect them from their Bible. I'm just going to tell them what it says. Okay, I'm going to let them look at it, and here's my view. But yeah, I mean, I guess all I was saying was that, you know, I found it interesting. There was two scientists I was watching. They were arguing about their view on the interpretation of quantum physics, and one of them, they heard the argument this guy was given. I wasn't that familiar with it, but he goes, oh yeah, that side always tries to argue that point. And I was thinking, well, if it's a fair point, you know, there's so anyway, yeah, take that with whatever, you know, for whatever it's worth. But yeah,
I just want to point out, I don't thank you for the compliment and even the criticism. If I can try to better. I guess what I'm trying to do is say, while Christians will find the most scholarly they can within the paradigm, I think they're finding the strongest they can within their paradigm. And it's like, I know a lot of Muslims that are very scholarly that I've been looking into, and they're very academic, and they go to like the outskirts, you know what I mean, of what they can, but there's limits. They have limitations. Can God have a wife? Could Asherah be God's wife? You know, can you actually allow that to be the case? That God had a wife, he had children, he has a physical body. Well, no, that's anachronistic to say he's outside space and time. There's a lot of things to consider, and all I'm saying is, and thank you, Converse, for jumping in, man. Appreciate that. Is simply don't stop there, and you're not. I'm not speaking to you. I'm speaking to the general Christian who goes, Heiser's the answer. And they literally go there, and they don't really go to anything beyond that. They love going, I can't wait for Heiser to put out an eschatology video so I know what his eschatology is. And when he comes out and says, I don't know the eschatology because the New Testament doesn't know the eschatology, it seems like a cop-out to me because, yes, there is multiple ideas going on. Don't get me wrong. I'm looking at this deeply. One of the reasons I was able to leave Christianity was the end did not happen. But I got Christian academics like Del C. Allison Jr. who say that Christians oftentimes have not even entered the Enlightenment yet. They're still doing things that 300 years ago in academia, they've also already solved these things. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do is say, don't stop there, keep going. You know what I mean?
Just want to add, Derek, you know, the fact that you've got apologetics to start with, it's a whole discipline based on responding to issues. And it started with theodicy. I think it's St. Augustine of Hippo, 4th century, and it's the problem of evil. That's how it all started. And from this point on, the amount of issues raised against religion gave rise to a whole discipline of apologetics. It's actually, you know, William Lane Craig. These are people who are fully trained on how to respond strategically and tactically, and sometimes using logical fallacies. I'm afraid, you know, from red herring all the way to straw man. You know,
there's an answer for everything that you.
Everything has an escape. I'm telling you, Camille. I feel like I'm stepping on your toes by cutting you off. Please.
No, not at all. I'm just listening because you also forget a lot of Christians don't listen to apologists. They believe wholeheartedly in that book. And if you even blink about doubt or anything, they're going to shut you down. Even with, you know, all the theologians and stuff who say, yeah, you need to look at this and stuff. They're not going to listen to it. So it's kind of like hitting a brick wall with your bare fist.
And that's a good point. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
My old church used to say that William Lane Craig was going to hell because he's the guy, right? He's the main fighter for apologetics in today's age. My church said he was going to hell because he doesn't believe that the world's 6,000 years old.
Oh, your church is crazy, though. I've seen the guy.
Camille, that's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Medallia, welcome. I'm just popping you on the screen. Do you want me to mute you? Can you hear me?
Oh, hi. I'm sorry.
Hey, we're just hanging out.
Another lady. All right. Yeah,
how is everyone?
Good. How are you?
Welcome.
Sweet. Welcome.
Did you want to say anything? I've got a super chat I could pull up. We could keep going if you don't mind.
All the pressure's on you.
It's all on you.
Well, I guess one of my questions would be, you know, if you're coming from like a religious background, what was, I guess, the event in your life that just kind of made you question religion?
Each of us has a story on that.
Yeah.
Camille, you want to go first, actually, about that one?
Yeah, let Camille, yeah.
Well, I'd always question it because, again, I had mentioned before, I grew up reading Greek myths and Norse myths and Egyptian mythology. And I always questioned certain things that the pastors of the churches that I grew up in, I went to as a teenager, and up until a few years ago, I always questioned it, but you would also have that reassurance that no, it is what it is. It's what God says, and He's good all the time, and all the time He is good, and you just need to trust God and all that stuff. But the main thing I think where it started from was I had a health issue almost 5 years. It'll be 5 years in May, and that kind of opened my eyes a little bit, and then also started observing certain people's behaviors, and then I wouldn't say spidey sense, but my BS meter kept going off every time I heard a sermon. It didn't matter who it was from, whether it was from my pastor or those associated with him or TD Jakes, anybody. It was just my bullshit meter. Oops, sorry. My BS meter just kept going off and off. And so it was about that time where I decided, okay, you know what? I'm going to reread this thing for myself. I'm going to see this because it didn't make sense. It's like the cherry picking of the verses or telling people in abusive marriages, whether it is physical, mental, which is the hardest one in my opinion. It's not just the physical, it's the mental abuse going on, that you should stay it because God hates divorce. Or convincing people that, if you give, God's not getting something from you. He's trying to get something to you. And then to use, the verse in Malachi where he's talking to the Levite priest and saying, I can't really say it off the top of my head right now, but you know what I mean? Where like, bring ye all these tithes into the storehouse, that they be made by, will a man rob God, and all that other stuff. And just using certain cherry pick verses to literally manipulate the congregation into giving their money. I've seen people who were in the same financial situation for 20 plus years, giving their last and thinking that God is going to bless them. Or people who, devote so much time and energy to this and not reaping the quote unquote rewards and the blessings that were supposedly promised. And then I kept reading. And then that's when I actually found MythVision.
Uh-oh.
Right.
Because the key word was Christianity, false religion. And I think it was an episode you did with Dr. Price that popped up. And then there was another debate that Dr. Bart Ehrman had. And so from there, it just kind of went on. But I've always had like the spidey sense, like this doesn't make sense. But I went along with it because that's how I was raised. That's what I grew up in. That's what I knew, during struggle, during hard time, you turn to God, you get on your knees and pray. And I said, I'm tired of being on my knees and praying. I'm not getting any answers. I'm not getting any solutions. It's not working for me, no matter how hard I believed and sowed and stayed diligent and felt that, being a part of ministry was my duty. But yeah, that was a part of a whole big wake up call that I just summed up.
That's awesome. Yeah, we got to get your story, by the way. You and me, we got to link up and do it.
Yeah, we've been busy.
We have, and we talked about that. But now that you're showing face more, I really am excited to have you come on sometime. Hanny, thanks for that super chat, man. You didn't have to do that. I really do appreciate the support. He said, thanks for the fun and informative hangout, guys. Go subscribe. I didn't even mention this yet. Having him in the chat, we literally did this 5 minutes before the show. I was like, jump in. He's like, I got to take a shower, man. I'm like, all right, go subscribe to his channel because he also interviews a lot of scientists and a lot of scholars. Dr. Price is on there. You've interviewed, Michael Shermer, professional skeptics, and Lawrence Krauss, and lots and lots of people. I mean, the list goes on and on. So go show Critical Faculty some love and subscribe. If someone in the chat, like a mod or something, could put it in the chat, that'd be awesome. In fact, let me see if I can make you a mod as well, Hanny, so that way you also can have that option to pop in and plug it for me so it's easier. I'm sorry. For that, if you don't mind, since you super chatted, tell us your version of things, if you don't mind.
I'm not the very emotional type of person. I like things to make sense. And I actually have a double background because my father used to be a Muslim and my mother was Christian. So Egyptian, half Irish. And it was interesting because it was a secular household. I did not have any traumatic upbringing in terms of was forced to practice a certain religion. So it's actually gave me a good ground to look at the two books and compare and go to the mosque and the church and check them out. And things were a bit weird. Like even from the age of 16 or 17, I found multiple things to be on the bizarre side. That story of Elijah and the baldy and the bear was one that stood out for me. There was one about in the Old Testament where if a woman gets it between two men and they're fighting and touches one of their genitalia. It was weird stuff. It was like, you got to be kidding. This got to be like strange. It can never come from a god. And then I got it really into science. All the way from biology, evolution, quantum mechanics, and all the claims of the Quran. You hear about all these scholars that claim that the Quran have found miracles, scientific miracles, way before the advancement of science, and they're all like crazy, laughable things like the in embryology. The Quran is going around claiming that they understood how embryology and development of the fetus happens in the womb of a woman, and they're talking about a skeleton developing before the flesh. And the flesh then sort of covers a skeleton. So you literally have a skeleton inside your body, which is just crazy stuff. So yeah, I've rejected all sort of religion forms at the age of 17 or 18. I was kind of a God of Spinoza kind of guy for about 6 months or 8 months. And then I said, no, I've got to abandon the whole thing and start from a position where I'm open. Show me the money, Jerry Maguire. Show me evidence, and I'll open-minded. I'm not gonna close the door, but they gotta be good.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you, Neil.
So for me, it was the historical aspect, because I was a Christian and I wanted it to be true so bad. Actually, as a matter of fact, I still want it to be true. Why not? Why wouldn't you? All I have to do is accept Jesus, and I'm saved forever, eternal life. Of course I want that to be true. Why wouldn't you want that to be true? So what I did was, as a Christian, I really dug into Josephus and Philo and Herodotus and all these ancient writers, and I'm trying to match up, is the Bible historically true? Do we have evidence that this stuff is real? And it's like, so some of it shows up in the historical record, or was a city that people thought was mythological. They found that city in the 19th century. There's a lot of things that actually show historical truth to the Bible. However, mostly no. Most of it doesn't show up. Most of it doesn't even match up. For example, the flood myth. We can date the flood myth to, I think it's like 2700 BC, based on the chronological of the characters' names in the Bible and their dates and when they died and when they were born. You can go back and date all the way to Noah. You get to 2700 BC. That's when a global flood happened. So we should know about this. This is not that long ago compared to, like 5000 BC, right? This is not that bad. We have evidence of Sumerians living in that time period. There's no flood being talked about. Not only that, there's talking about 8 people coming out of this ark and populating the world, when we know archaeologically, historically, and logically, we know that there was at least 20 million people living on the planet around that time, at least, because the cities were populating all across India, all across Egypt. The Americas even had people there by that time. So it's like, you're telling me that 8 people within a couple of years populated the whole earth, plus we have no evidence for the flood. So right away, the Old Testament's it's just knocked out. The New Testament, you get into that, you talk about, okay, is Jesus, what do we have for Jesus? There's not a single shred of physical evidence from his lifetime. There's no primary sources for him in his lifetime. All the sources for him comes after his life. The earliest we get is Paul, and then Paul's obviously preaching Christianity. So it's like, okay, there probably was a guy, but for all these miracles to happen, 5,000 people being fed fish. We have a guy named Pliny the Elder. He wrote an entire volume encyclopedia in that area in a city called Caesarea, which is in modern day Israel, where he wrote about miracles. He wrote about prodigal births. He wrote about the Essenes, who were this weird sect of Jews living in Qumran. He wrote about all this stuff happening in the 30s, but doesn't mention Jesus. And it's, for me, that's impossible for all these miracles to happen for thousands of people and not to get noticed until 40 years later. It looks more like there was a guy who had a cult, and his cult spread slowly over the decades into what it became. That's how it came. That's how I came to the conclusion that the Bible is more myth than history.
Thanks, no, appreciate it.
That, and if you want to add, I'm sorry, just gonna pop in real quick. But that, if you also want to look at why aren't miracles happening today? All these miracle signs and wonders that occurred in the Bible, why aren't they happening today?
Right.
You know, I don't see anybody being raised from the dead, because I think the 800,000 plus that have passed away over the past almost 2 years now, I think they would, like to have life back. Where are these cancers? One of the things that really got me, I don't really want to get off track here, but I noticed a lot of people dying of cancer in the church. A lot of people dying of cancer. If by his stripes we are healed and no weapon formed against us can prosper, why are so many people dying of cancer?
Right.
Where's the cancer coming from? Yes, I know there's a lot of changes in our environment and all this stuff, but in a place that is supposed to be a hospital for the sick, for the wounded, mentally, physically, emotionally, we're supposed to be, the blood of Jesus covers all, heals all. But people are dying in this place. I think I posted something like that in the private group too, because I couldn't understand it. I'm hearing all this stuff. I'm like, no, make it make sense. And it's not. Where are these miracles? We're believing, we're having faith, we're doing all of this stuff. We're believing, but people are still dying.
Right. You would
people
think
still hurting.
You would think that God would show the world, these are my people that believe in me. Watch how I treat them. Watch how
right.
watch how I do this.
Let me show my power. Let me cure people's depression. Let me, cure their drug, alcohol addiction. Let me show them how powerful I am. No. Why to a select few?
But to be honest, guys, there are thousands of claims of miracles every day. But if you notice, they are on the software level. They're never on the hardware. That's why God never heal and cure amputees. It's never. You never.
We had this debate, and I'll just say this and I'll briefly give you my little spiel. And I'm not even going to give you the spiel. I'm just going to give you, like, for me, I don't think it was like necessarily one argument. It was a moment in my life where I felt I was willing to listen to something with ears, not listen to it to defend, not listen to it to protect my ideology, my presuppositions, my worldview of Christianity. I was willing to listen for a moment, all the struggle that I'd gone through with addiction, that the pain and everything that I'd gone through of facing death, because heroin addiction leads you in that direction, where I was like, maybe I got it all wrong. I was just willing. All it took was willingness, willing to listen to something different. And I know people laugh and go, you listen to Zeitgeist. What a wackadoodle show. Zeitgeist has a lot of flaws and imperfections and this and this and that. Sure, I grant that now. But what it did is it said, even though it wasn't factually 100%, accurate, it said Jesus was very much like all of the other gods. And that's all I needed to really hear. But I needed to be able to internalize it and say, what makes this one true and everyone else is wrong? And I saw for a moment in my eye how prideful, how egotistical, how selfish this worldview I had was as a dying man from heroin addiction, and everyone else is wrong, and I can't even keep my own life under control. But I have the Holy Ghost that empowers me to get the hell out of here. Is what I was telling myself. You know what I'm saying? So I had the Holy Spirit. I was baptized in the Holy Spirit. I came from the freaky, crazy, I spoke in tongues.
All of that. All of that.
All of that.
All of that. Speaking in the tongues, laying on their hands. Hallelujah. Yes. Yes.
And there's a psychological thing that goes on with people like me, people like Derek. I actually thought Christianity, because I found Christianity in prison. And when I started reading that Bible, something was happening. I was feeling something. So I understand people when they say,
yeah, I felt it.
Yeah, you feel a type of hope.
Yeah, I felt it. There's a psychological thing happening.
Yep.
You pick up that book and you read it, and you're like, this, maybe I am chosen by God. Maybe this all is real. And then once you start that, the ball gets rolling. You make it real.
But here's the thing: when I actually had that serious internal doubt, and it wasn't a doubt like, oh God, that happened as time went by. Like, oh, am I going to go to hell? Is hell real? That stuff happened, yes, as I deconverted. But it was first the initial. There wasn't a solid stone shell keeping me from actually considering evidence. And when I looked at it without that supposition of experience that we feel when we go to church and we praise God and we feel his presence, which is psychological, and there's a lot of chemical reactions taking place, and the environment, everything plays a natural role in explaining why we felt these things. But when I was able to actually examine it.
Right. And as someone who used to sing praise and worship and be in the choir, it is very, very true.
Yeah.
It is very true. It is like a communal energy that flows through, where it's like, oh, it's a bit euphoric a bit, because you're thinking, okay, everybody here, we all are here to worship God. We all are here to lift up the name of Jesus. And depending on what church you go to, they're one and the same. And
yeah,
it's that tie. But as soon as you walk out that building, the high is gone.
Yeah.
As soon as you get back to your life, all that euphoria gone.
Madalaya, are you a Christian? I'm just wondering. I just wanted to hear what your thought about
Medalia. I think it's Medalia.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you, Derek. You're actually saying my name right. I was born Catholic. I was baptized Catholic when I was a baby, and was Catholic till about 14, 15. When I was 15, my father passed away, and I couldn't understand at that time why God would take away my father, who was everything to me. He was, just everything. And I became atheist for a few years. And then, I met my ex-husband, who his family was very, very Christian, still is to this day, more along the lines of Baptist. And I went to church for about a good year and a half, still being atheist, still questioning like why. Also, I'm an 80s baby, and I remember in the 90s seeing a movie called Stigmata.
Yeah.
And that really made me question things too, and it had a good message, God is inside you, all around you, and he's not in a building made of brick and stone. And, I didn't really believe in church. But, anyway, so when I went to church one day, I got that Holy Spirit, and I just remember feeling so odd and looked over to my ex-mother-in-law, and I was like, what is this? And I started crying, and then I was like, okay, well, if the Holy Spirit exists, then obviously God does. But just like how in institutions like prison, I don't want to say mental institutions, but just any institution, they always tell you to pray, and it's mainly like faith-based, usually Christian, where they tell you, you got to turn to God. And I've even had cancer at 28, and everybody would tell me to pray and everything's going to be okay, and it did. I'm still in recovery and everything, but I ended up about 4 or 5 years ago, again, I was like, I'm done. I don't see any truth in the Bible. I started seeing the inconsistencies and everything. And I was in a abusive relationship for 4 years that, pretty much left me for dead. And he always used, some of the verses where, I should obey and submit. And, I don't know. And in the last 3 years, I've done a lot of research. And of course, I now am watching MythVision, and I'm really loving it. So I just want to say thank you. But nothing in the Bible, to me, I mean, I think the core message, you know, really does speak to people, especially in despair. But I don't know.
There's a difference, and I just want to make. I got to get these super chats because I do promise people at the bottom I'm going to get them. But I just want to say, I think there's messages in all world religions that are applicable because they're common sense. Oftentimes, it's like it's things people have learned. It's like that wise old man or old woman who's wanting to sit down. Your great grandmother goes, "Sweetheart, let me tell you something.
Right.
I know what that's like. I've been through it." Right. And you're like, "Oh, okay. She knows what she's talking about." And then you don't listen to her and you do it. And then you find out the hard way. And then you're like, dang, she knew what she was talking about. Okay. Common sense. You reap what you sow. Well, if you don't sow and you're going to harvest, you're not going to have as much food. And that next winter's going to suck. Like that you learn, and they learn the harder way than we do today. We have McDonald's. You can go down there and panhandle and people will hand you food every day long if you needed to. I'm just making the point. So yeah, there's a lot of emotional gratification you can get out of this if you're the suffering servant type. It's really kind of like Nietzsche said, a slave mentality, though.
Slave morality.
Yep. It's slave morality.
It is slavery because you are literally brainwashed into serving. You give up your time, your energy, your finances. It is literally slavery.
Well, it's like the epistles. They always start off, Paul, a slave.
I am a servant, bond servant.
Well, yeah, servitude.
Yeah. But basically, what you just said though, when you ended up when you were speaking, you ended up with, I just don't know. That is exactly why I have my channel, and probably why Derek has his channel, because it does come back to that. It comes back to what is all this? Why do we myth? Why do we have religion? Why do we believe in this stuff? That's why I want to do this. This is what I'm in the same boat. It's like, you think you have the answer, you think it's not true, you debunk it, but then you think it's true again, and then you think it might be not true again, and you always go back to why is that? You know what I'm saying?
And it's okay not to know.
Right.
That's one of the things that people don't realize. It is okay not to know.
But
a man that knows all things knows nothing at all.
Run from
it is okay not to know.
Run from the person who says they know, like they have all the answers on this. That's the scary people you got to watch out for. Oh, Flamio, what did you guys do with your channels when you were too small to get guests? So briefly, just to make this quick.
Yeah.
When I was small, like I had a job working full time for many years while I started this channel, and I was paying scholars, for their time, and I still do that today.
Same.
So it's about like you want serious scholarship, but some people just hang out. Some people just do shows and talk like we're talking today. It doesn't cost a thing to have friends come and do this. You don't have to do what we did. And eventually, man, YouTube might come through with enough income where you can afford to actually pay. I know that Hanny and I know for a fact that Neil from Gnostic Informant both have had to pay for scholars to come on their show. If you want to take it serious, it costs money. And that's to be honest. But at first, it was just finding interesting topics that I loved and being passionate about it. That's it. Simple as that. Did you guys want to make a comment?
Yeah, real quick. Everything you just said, I can agree with. And I'm still kind of a small channel. I don't even have 10,000 subscribers yet. But if you look at my first 10, 15 videos, it's just me talking about stuff, doing edited videos, fully edited with visuals on subjects. Some are 10 minutes long, some are 20 minutes long. I didn't jump right into interviewing scholars. I just started out making content that I thought that I like doing. And if anyone's out there is wondering, like, Flamio, if that's what you're trying to find, some like, what should I do? I have no money, but I want to make a channel. Just start making content. That's it. Just start making something.
And I'm going to be honest, it doesn't matter what you make, but there's people who go, you think I could be successful and do this for a living? Like, I'm not going to lie and say that, sure, anybody can do this. It takes serious passion and the personality, and there's a lot to run something like this, and to make it a full-time thing is very difficult. It's a lot of work. So but go ahead.
Just to add here, whatever you do, these are excellent tips, but whatever you do, be authentic, be yourself, try to be interesting and offer something slightly different. Don't just repeat and be another channel that sort of, copy certain conversations. Just be yourself. Even if you're a little bit odd, that's actually all right. Show it to the world. That's okay.
Find your niche within the niche.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that super chat. Doc said, continue with the academic endeavors, folks. Let the evidence illuminate that path. Absolutely, Doc. Doc comes through with some really deep questions for my scholars, and I can tell he's done some reading, so appreciate the support, man. Thank you so much. And we're going to keep going at that. Fire Saber says, a little off topic, but any chance of interviewing a Unitarian Universalist scholar in the future for a slightly different perspective? I've actually interviewed a Universalist Unitarian preacher who is an astrotheologian early on in my channel. Wow. And he interprets Mark as a secret celestial story. It's really an allegory of the sun, moon, and stars going through the zodiac signs. The sun is passing through the 12 signs. And he's a Universalist Unitarian pastor. And he was wonderful. But if you're interested in checking that out, it goes way back into my channel. You'd have to find it. I can't remember his name right now. That's how far back. But I'm interested in the scholarship. I don't look for apologists. I'm not interested in apologists. I know all about that game. Like, I came out of that. People are like, why do you spend so much time on Christianity? Just a little heads up. I was a Christian. You know, like, I only speak like that. Like, Hanny talks about Islam. He doesn't really talk as much. Not saying you don't. I do the same thing. But it's not like your central focus to deal with Christianity, because you were dealing with Muslims and coming out of Islam. So it's just the thing that you do. Anyway, there's my particular thing. Last super chat here. Thank you so much, Shireen. Such a lovely hangout tonight. And thank you, everyone, for your honest contributions and hard-learned freedom from religion.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's an ongoing process. Thanks. It really is. It especially when, like, a lot of your friends are still in it, and when you start talking about certain things, including like the historicity of Jesus, the contradictions, sometimes friendships can get strained.
Oh,
and
yeah, my mom. Don't get me started on telling you about my mom. She calls me randomly, Derek, just in case. And you know what I'm talking about. And she goes,
I get the call.
Just right now, I want to hear you say it. Just say, God, be merciful and forgive me. Like, my mom is terrified.
Right.
She's
I don't have that with my mom.
Going to hell. Yeah, my mom thinks she's like really, really worried I'm going to hell. And I mean, I'm talking about, this is a current ongoing thing. She's that concerned.
Something funny, my mother left the church before I did.
Wow.
While she still does believe in the Abrahamic God, she's moving herself out of that. And so sometimes she'll still, refer to God as, Abba Father and, all that stuff. So sometimes we have very interesting discussions, regarding
God
that.
in her own image. She's got her own idea. My wife's the same way. My wife,
yeah,
she has this. She thinks there's something. It's a Spinoza God, but it cares. It cares about you. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I'm on the fence of, I'm agnostic, not completely atheist. Because while I think there is some kind of higher power, I've yet to experience or see. I kind of think there is. I don't believe in the Abrahamic God.
Right.
I just don't. It's too much contradiction, and it's just no.
Well,
sorry.
Oh, sorry. No, it's okay.
Sorry, Medalia. You go ahead. You go ahead.
No, I just think it's funny that you guys just said that, because yesterday I was talking to my mom about something, probably something that I saw on your channel yesterday. But she goes, you know what? You're starting to sound more like an atheist. And I got pretty defensive. And, I was just like, this is the reason why so many, Christians or people are just pushed away from scripture. And, like, I just got defensive. But today she called up and said, I'm so sorry that I called you an atheist and I got that angry. But, I said, I appreciate the apology, but I understand where you were coming from. I know that you read the Bible constantly, and this is a scary thought, because to you, I am going to hell. So,
I always remembered. I always remember this funny story from Richard Dawkins when he's talking about a mother concerned about her daughter and saying, well, I don't mind you not believing in God, but an atheist. It's like
atheist is like a bad word or something. It's a curse word. It's like, oh, atheist. Oh my God. Like I'll give you an example. I think I mentioned this before, where my former pastor went live and said that he feels bad for atheists at this time of year. And I'm like, why? I'm thinking, why do you feel bad? Do you even know really what it means to be an atheist or agnostic, or you just lump them all together just because they don't believe in your sweet Jesus?
Dude, we get to celebrate Santa Claus. You understand? Baby Jesus don't do crap compared to Santa Claus. You know what I'm saying? I'm just being honest. Like, I don't get it, and it is a curse word. It's become like.
Isn't it interesting though that there are about 5 to 5.5 billion people who are kind of religious, but I claim there are about 5.5 billion religions, because everybody has a slight variation in the God they want him to be, and they're usually a reflection of their own character. So a very good person, being a Muslim or Christian, will be only attracted to the good verses, and they will completely ignore all the horrible stuff, and they will attach themselves, and they will they will see God in their own way. It's going to be about love, and it's going to be about caring. But a slightly angry dude will be going, well, God is righteous, and applies his revenge when it needs to happen.
Or an abusive ex-husband will start quoting servitude type verses.
2 Corinthians on people and stuff. And,
oh, listen, I've been married now 15 years, almost 16 years, right? I wasn't always doing good. You got to imagine drug addiction. How do people act on drugs, right? So there were times where I was having this worldview of like scripture and still not being right in my mind. And me and my wife would argue and fight, and I would find, you're just not a submissive wife. And she'd quote Bible verses against me and go, you know what? You're supposed to love me like Christ loved the church. And I'm like, you know what? You're supposed to be obedient to me. And this is what happened in the garden. And like, dude, it's the most ridiculous crap. Anyway.
I'm not submissive, and that's probably why I'm not married still. So, I mean, I'm not Ruth. I'm not going to lay at the feet of Boaz in his bed. I'm going to entreat myself to leave, not to stay with you. So those kinds of things. Yeah, it's psychology. It really is. It's psychology.
Let me jump into these super chats real quick, if you don't mind me getting us caught up here. Mr. Keeps on ticking. What's up, MythVision family? My amputee neighbor still hasn't gotten his leg to grow back after much prayer. Meanwhile, I keep racking myth points. Yes, you do. Keep on ticking. I appreciate the point. In fact, we recently had a debate on the channel. Debate discussion. I don't really like debates. I like discussions. The example of an amputee miracle went back to like 1600 and something. They were trying to claim that there was some guy's leg who got cut off, put in a box inside the dirt. And somehow 2 years later, his leg is all of a sudden found appearing on his leg still. And it's like, wow, what happened to World War I, World War II? Anyway, there's a lot of legs that were amputated or not existent that could easily be proven, and God could just come down and make that happen. But he doesn't. So keep.
And there's nothing miraculous about it. It happens in nature. Geckos and some amphibians can grow limbs at will, and we just don't have the gene for it.
Yeah, I'm just saying that the whole amputee thing. It'd be awesome to see it happen. JM, thank you for the super chat. Much love. Always seeing your initials in here. Thank you. I appreciate it. And then William Aron said Christianity continues to exist, and this was your point, Hanny. Christianity continues to exist because it's able to create new versions of itself, allowing Christians make new congregations and communities.
Right.
It becomes very what's the word, malleable. It's molding to its current situation, and we see that happen over time, even with God. Like, that's why I love this book. Like, even reading a little bit of M. David Litwa recently on the virgin birth. Luke is using language very similar. Who's the guy that you keep telling me I need to read? Neil. Who's the guy who's talking about virgin births and dealing with the gods and such? He's using creation language about Timaeus as well.
Oh, Gurmerkin?
No, not Gurmerkin. I was talking about Litwa, where Litwa was talking about how there's creation language used in Luke's virgin birth narrative. And there's another contemporary writing around the time Luke's writing.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Pagan
yeah.
author.
Plutarch.
Plutarch.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sitting there, okay, the point is, and if you go back into it, so gods can have sex with humans, but a female god cannot get pregnant by a human male. This is their mindset. But a male god can impregnate a female human. The seed can go only one direction and not the other. And so while that's the case, the language there is not sexual. The union is not sexual in Luke. It is creation language. But in reality, you go further back, gods had to have sex with humans. So it's like a philosophical evolution that takes place where gods don't have to have sex with humans in order to miraculously create birth in a human. You see, it just changes, just like God is now outside space and time. When did that happen? When did God stop it, like being actively appearing
in the clouds, on the mountains,
walking with Abraham, walking with Adam?
So basically, he's the watcher.
Yeah.
Yes. Like when did
Derek,
that happen?
If I may, I just want to make an analogy and pose a question to the whole panel. And it's I'm going to use biology here and evolution. You've got the fundamentalists who stick to the literal words, and that's akin to a species that don't change and mutate, and therefore they're not subject to natural selection. They might die off at the first disease because they don't make copies of themselves. But a religion that is so adaptable, that can mutate and can adapt to environments over time, will always live in one form or another. Is it better to have a fundamentalist religion that can eventually die off because it doesn't make copies of herself and that those copies sort of adapt to the new environments, and have religion that keep evolving and keep distorting the truth by making copies of themselves, trying to adjust to new realms and new understanding and new societies, but then prolonging mythological and delusional thinking in the process for millennia in the future?
I mean, look, would we rather, this question makes me ask, and I want you guys to give your opinion here. The question to me sounds like this. Do you think it's better that we get rid of it and find out something to replace it that is more factual and not as mythological? I mean, of course, who wouldn't want that? The thing is I don't think that's going to happen. So I encourage progressive thought. I encourage Christians to start viewing people who are not of the same sex or not of the same sexual orientation or identity, whatever, like go with the culture. Because eventually, even if they're 10 steps behind, they're not 1,000 steps behind. At least we're trying to get them to, hey, slavery's not good. Do we agree? Okay, we agree. Yay. Okay, next step. Let's keep working with humanity and evolve. So I'm more progressive. I've heard people say that Islam needs to go and completely be gone. I don't believe in progressive. I'm sorry. I mean, like I would, in an ideal world, sure. Could we press a button and fix that? And that would be great. Who wouldn't? I mean, as far as we are concerned, but that's not the reality.
It's like the Catholic Church allowing gay marriage. Well, that's a good thing. When the people shouldn't be like, oh, it's the Catholic Church they just want to stay alive. It's like, no, they should be doing stuff like that. That's fine. Right. I'm all for that.
Well,
here's my thing. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, go. Religion is so embedded in our culture. Like it's I don't know. We've seen like a influx in people that, whether you call it progressive or enlightened over the past like 25 years with the birth of the internet, so yes, you've seen like, people more questioning because you have the knowledge at your fingertips. But, in the early 90s and 80s and so on, like you knew what you knew because you were taught that. So religion has been what you were taught. Now we're at a time where we can ask the questions and get the answers pretty easily. So that's why I feel like even the adaptations of religion, like I don't know.
I just wanted to make a laugh. Apostate Prophet, he's not feeling good tonight. We had to reschedule so everybody knows that that's what we did. Pray for religious people so they stop believing. No, I totally agree with Medalia that that's what we were taught. Sorry, Camille.
It's okay. I'll give a historical example. So everybody knows about the last Tsar of Russia, Tsar Nicholas II, and his family being executed in 1918, right? Well, when they took away when the Bolsheviks overtook the company, not the company, excuse me, the country,
Yeah.
and put in something else, people thought it would have been better, but it turned out to be worse.
Yeah.
You went from an autocratic society to a communist nation. It will be the same thing with, and I speak just for Western Christianity, because in a lot of other countries, Christianity is not the religion, I want to say. So you take away Christianity, you take away this religion, okay, then you bring something in, then it ends up being worse than what was before.
Scientology.
Oh, good.
What if Scientology replaced Christianity? Then imagine the world then.
Oh,
Well,
God.
how long has it been since, prayer has been taken out of school? Like, what, 15, 20 years maybe?
No.
A little bit longer?
Longer than that. Because
But
the woman who did the lawsuit about prayer in school, she died several years ago. And this was done, I believe, in like the 80s. I believe. So we're looking at almost 40 years.
Okay.
so maybe religion is. I mean, I think we're addicted to storytelling. It's the Jung archetype. We cannot. It's the legends. It's the stories. Can we evolve into still keeping the story? So I can go to a Superman or a Batman movie. Me and Dr. Robert Price have got this in common. Actually, bought 3 of his collections the other day, so we're exchanging some action figures at the moment. And I'm a superhero nerd, and I understand. I live the story. I watch Superman, and I live the story. But at the end of the movie, I understand this was fiction, and I still enjoyed it exactly the same.
Yeah.
Can we evolve into the same species who can enjoy a story and know that the story is not real, yet keep that human tradition of storytelling and understanding wisdom through storytelling without the having to cut the edge of my penis to have a covenant with God?
Let me add to that, and I want to get Samantha's super chat here to add to what you said. I think, and when people think of atheism or agnostics or skeptics, they think that means write out narrative, get rid of stories. They think all stories bye-bye. No, I don't think there would be a problem if the world saw the Judeo-Christian narratives like they do today, the Greco-Roman, mythologies. If we saw them as stories that we can glean wisdom and stuff from. For example, you brought up superheroes. The first Iron Man. One of my favorite scenes at the beginning is Robbie Downey Jr. He's this on top of the world, cocky son of a gun, who's out here showing this missile that takes a whole mountain down. He gets literally these Taliban, if you could use the term in the movie, capture him. He has shrapnel close to the heart. He's being operated inside of a cave. This guy went from top of the world to nobody, okay? He's in a cave. He's dying. They're operating on him, and they place some magnet, temporary, in his chest to try and keep the shrapnel from getting into his heart. And inside of this, what I like to look at it as Plato's cave. And I think the analogy's there. I really do think that the author of this knew what he was doing, or she. That he's in a cave. He's going from ignorance and having to learn and realize his value and worth in the world. And rising up creates a machine inside this cave to exit, killing the enemies in the outside, if you will, but becomes a hero. He literally reborn into a new hero. And this is the whole imagination that comes to life for me is I was dying. Can I change? My father always said this wise thing to me. Derek, you always told me you want to change the world. And I did as a Christian, right? You want to go and change the world. You want to convert everybody to become a Christian. He said, Derek, if you want to change the world, you only have to change one thing. Everything. And it's you. Because you are everything. Once you change you, the whole world will change. And that is a philosophy that is real to me. That doesn't require Yahweh. That doesn't require Vishnu, Buddha, none of that. That is common practical wisdom that humans have lived with and learned, and we have applied them to narratives and stories and made creative fictions and even based on real historical things that have happened. Like my own life is a real situation.
I think Gandhi said, "Be the change you seek." So it's there in the human wisdom.
You wish to be, yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned Iron Man, because he became Jesus in Endgame, because he sacrificed his own life for humanity.
Yes.
So here we go. I mean, here we have the human imagination to come up with heroes and aspire to something. To us, we can look at us to be inspired. We've got those examples.
Yeah. And I just that's all I'd like to say. That point is we have what it takes, and I don't think we give ourselves
and
enough credit.
Some people will prefer to be in the cave. They know they're in Plato's cave. They prefer it, and that's a reality too.
They're comfortable.
It's their comfort zone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
A lot of people are comforted when they think that, this big spiritual being is looking out for their best interest, and that they take comfort in that. Like, oh, God loves me and he's going to do all right for me. And if I can do this, I'll continue to see these blessings and blah, blah, blah. And they take comfort in that. So what happens when a child has a security blanket and you take the security blanket away? What happens? The child cries, throws a fit, everything, until he gets that security blanket back.
It actually reminds me of that Judas figure from the first Matrix movie. Not the fourth one sucked really badly.
Yes.
I hated it so much. Oh, so disappointed. So disappointed.
I haven't seen that yet. Sorry.
But you remember that Judas figure, the guy who betrayed Neo, and he was having a steak in the restaurant with Agent Smith, and he said, "Even though I know this steak is not real, but it's juicy and it's tender." And he knew this is the best he could.
Wipe
his name was Cypher, by the
Right.
way.
Cypher, you're
there
right.
You go.
Yeah, he said,
You
wipe my
somebody.
memory. I don't want to remember this. And he's like, okay. Like Smith was willing to grant him anything he wanted just so he could get into the real world and make some damage instead of staying stuck in the Matrix, was the whole point. A couple super chats real quick. Samantha B, the gods moved from walking with people to mountaintops to the clouds as people got wiser to the schemes of the priest and went looking for the gods. Interesting. That's a clever thing to think about. Like, he's up there on that mountain behind that rock. You can't see him, and you're not allowed to go up there. Don't even touch the mountain. He'll kill you. There's a place in the Bible.
Gets farther and farther away.
And eventually when we're actually in the clouds going, hold on, you said he was up here. It's like,
it's metaphysical. No. It's metaphysical.
Oh, no, next level.
I have an interesting parable type story, if I could tell you guys in just a second here real quick. William Arons, if the James Webb Telescope finds an extraterrestrial civilization, there will be a deluge of new stories, beliefs, and philosophies. Yeah. I agree. I think there's going to be a whole new flux of ideas that'll just keep coming. So yeah, I totally agree. This is a parable I told even when I was deconverting, and I felt there was some wisdom gleaned in this because we all have a God concept, or we know of a God concept. It's not in any holy literature, but I thought it was great. And it was me discovering me. And this is it. I'm going to use Camille as the example. There was a wise girl named Camille. All right. And so let me do a totally different one. I've got a couple different parables here. Let's start with one here. This is one about a wise person, but let's do a different one. In the beginning, God was creating humans, creating us. And he's whispering, saying, and notice I used a he because it's coming from the Judeo-Christian worldview, but he's whispering and he says, man will be wise. Man will be creative, intelligent, ambitious, a conqueror of things, and find ways to solve problems, but also compassionate, loving, all the attributes that I have. And then Satan overhears this and realizes God's about to create all of this, including man. And Satan's thinking, and he says, where can I hide God from man so that he'll never find him? I'll hide him in the mountains beneath the rocks. I'll hide him underneath the rocks, beneath the dirt. Man will never find God there. And he thinks about all the attributes that God listed: ambitious, creative, problem-solving, and all the things. It says, no, he'll remove the rock, remove the dirt, and he'll find God. I can't put him there. Where can I put God? I'll put God beneath the oceans, underneath the sand of the seas. They'll never know to go underneath the water there and find God. That's where I'll hide him. And he thinks hard. Man is ambitious, intelligent. He'll create an apparatus and find a way to get beneath the water and sweep away the sand and discover God. I can't put him there. Where can I hide God? And he thinks long and hard on it. And then, bingo, it comes to his mind. He realizes, I'll hide God inside of every person ever created. They'll always be looking outward, always exploring, trying to find God, and never stop for one moment and just look inside themselves and realize God was there the whole time. Now, the moral of that story, without getting ontological and really trying to prove the existence of a God, the whole point was to look within, to just find yourself, discover yourself. And for me, that was a good narrative as I was deconstructing, because I was realizing I'm never going to find God. Like, there's never going to be an observable way of actually finding God. I was realizing that with all the issues I was finding biblically and the things we've been discussing. Why aren't there miracles? All of this, I guess I'll look to myself and to those who love me and care about me and the people around me. They're a reflection of that good thing that I want in my life. And that's what I did. It was my own little philosophy as I deconverted. So I didn't go like from I'm a Bible believing Christian to where I am now. That was a very long process of taking the plane from 40,000 feet and learning to land it without crashing and burning.
As one of the 7 ancient Greek philosophers, I forgot they call them the 7 like masters or something. It's from Delphi in Greece. What the maxim was, know thyself, the number 1 maxim.
No, notice it had to be 7. 7 is such a number,
So it's 12.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, just like your parables, I think that's why that quote in Stigmata really stuck with me. That God is in you and all around you.
Mm-hmm. I mean, at the end of the day, how could you tell the difference, right? This is the point I was trying to get at. Is like, once I started going, you got what it takes, Derek. You can beat this addiction. When I used to cry, I don't have the power. You have to do it for me. I can't beat this addiction. And found out that I had what it took. I saw that every Christian seen the footprints in the sand. And when you were weak and you were tired and you couldn't do it, I carried you. And that's why you saw 2 footprints. No, I realized that was me.
Yeah.
Or it was a family member, someone who loved me. Santa Claus. I finally, all three of my boys know about Santa Claus now. They know that it's fake. And I finally say, how long I've been wanting to tell you it was me and your mom? Because we've been given all the credit to an invisible person. We wanted you to appreciate the value that we were giving you gifts on this day.
Here's something funny.
You know what I mean?
Derek, here's something funny. I never lied to my son about Santa Claus, but I lied to him about there being a God.
Well, you don't know if there's not, but if you mean the Abrahamic,
right?
I get what you mean, yeah.
Yes, the Abrahamic God. Yeah, because you hear the stories. Oh, yeah, Saint Nick is based on a real person. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But little kids and stuff like that, they're like, oh, this is Santa Claus. I never raised my son to think that there was actually a Santa Claus. So he always knew that come Christmas time, those gifts came from your mother, your father, your grandma, those were your gifts came from. There was no man coming down my chimney because I don't have a chimney. And we're not leaving out the cookies and milk because your mama's lactose intolerant. So we're not doing that. So no. But I just thought that was really interesting. Like when you said that, like, you finally telling your boys that there's no Santa Claus. And I'm like, yeah, I never had him believe that.
See, I agree with the God within us sort of thing, but I think it's the idea, it's the alter ego. We realize our own shortcomings, and we create alter egos that are more perfect than us. So if we're weak, then he's stronger. If we don't know everything, he's omniscient. But the problem is, while you're trying to achieve that, you're never trying to do that yourself. You will just keep aspiring to that alter ego that you create, and you never become that person yourself. So it's almost like a lazy way to manipulate yourself into feeling good, because that superhero will come and always save the day. But most comic books at the moment, and is trying to invoke that the weakest person and the simplest people in the whole movie ends up saving the day somehow. The smallest guy, the one that the underdog. It's the underdog. So I think we need to stop thinking outwards, and we're going to start thinking about ourselves, and maybe sometime have to live with our shortcomings, saying, well, I'm not good enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not tall enough, and that's all right.
Yeah, you find your specialty and you work with that. I mean, what do you do? You know?
Yeah, stop comparing yourselves. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Yeah, I think everybody's special in their own way, and trying to value people like that is, I think, is important. Or you're just a born wretch, and all your righteousness is filthy rags before an all-loving God who wants to burn you forever if you don't accept it.
And you're a born sinner. You were born because you came through the line of Adam and Eve. You were born a sinner, and there's no hope for you. So you need Jesus.
Yeah,
really.
And these are actually, I talk to a lot of Christians who are like more liberal, and they're like, like that kind of version of Christianity that we came from. They're like, create you atheists and you skeptics and stuff, and it's true. I don't deny it, but I also say to them, like, I'm glad I actually challenged the whole foundation. You see, so I think that these more soft approached Christianities, they have found a gray, soft, lukewarm, easy to live with type concept, ignoring much of what the New Testament is actually saying, which makes them very comfortable. But you know, they'll never go all the way because they're totally cool in their comfort pocket. They go in, they say their Hail Marys, and they confess once a year or something, and they're totally cool. They're fine. They're cool with God.
They do the ritual communion. You know, they go to church, CME, Christmas, Mother's Day, Easter. You know, they're good. They're not good. Really. They weren't really dedicated.
Well, it's a yeah. I know what you're saying, and yes, I agree with you. But it's like, I wish I wasn't so extreme, but at the same time, I'm glad I figured this out. Charles Wilcox said, and thank you for the super chat, Christianity starts in Acts 11:26. What say each guest about the followers in the decades before Paul's stay in Antioch? Laugh out loud. It's always entertaining.
I refer to Bart Ehrman on that one. They were all over the place. They disagree on almost everything. I would say, just like Bart Ehrman would say, that Christians today, a Mormon and a Catholic, have more in common than Christians did in the first century. That's my answer to that.
I would say, if I may, jumping in, and I'd love to hear people's thoughts, but this is just me giving my personal, since I think there was a guy at the basis, a cult leader named Jesus that started the movement. And if he didn't exist, is a whole different question. But since I think there was a guy, I would look at another historical example of a cult leader who died and what happened to the movement as soon as he died. Not like decades later, but right out the gate. Joseph Smith, okay? Joseph Smith dies. We have accounts of this. His entire religious movement, literally, it was already this way during his life. During his life, there were splits over polygamy and non-polygamy, and you name it, there was so many problems. But when he died, there was a power struggle. The expectation of his death wasn't there. So if it's true that the death of Jesus wasn't anticipated, he got captured, here he is, a criminal, he's killed, and they don't know how to rationalize it, so cognitive dissonance kicks in, and they're making an excuse for why he died, if you take that approach. Then the power struggle of who's in charge, what's going to happen, what did he mean, and the interpretations go wild. I think it did start as Jewish only. There were only Jews in the movement. And then, of course, it splinters out into a more cosmopolitan, leaving Jewish-only ideas to now we have Samaritans, now we have Gentiles, and people's interpretations of this run wild. That's my thoughts. I mean, just give my opinion.
I agree. And also, basically, they were running around like chickens with their heads cut off. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
they were everywhere. They had it was a different version of Christianity, regardless of where you went. Antioch, you know, going to the Gentiles, all that stuff. It was a different version wherever you went. So yeah, they didn't know what to do. Their leader was gone. You know, they just had words or, you know, beatitudes or whatever you want to call them to try to get it in. They were confused. They didn't have any direction.
That's the point. And when you look at Joseph Smith as that example historically and look at what happened, you have all of these versions claiming to be the true Latter-day Saint church, whatever they want to name them, because they're not all named that. They have different names. They all claim to be directly from what the true original prophet Joseph Smith had to say before he apostatized. And then some of them say he didn't apostatize, and they want to make apologetics to say, no, he didn't do that. He didn't do this when we think he did. There's a lot of stuff. So, Charles, this is an interesting question. We don't even know if he was a radical zealot. I mean, there are real scholars in history who thought Jesus might have been some radical zealot, apocalyptic leader who was ready to take on Rome. And then there's others who say, no, he was apocalyptic, but he wasn't a zealot. What Jesus do you want, right?
I just wanted to add to this point. Jesus is very unique. He's the only one that didn't actually establish a religion. There were no such thing as Christians. There was still a Jewish person. Remember, in the evolution of Jesus, in Mark, Jesus didn't know what the hell was going on to him. He was being led to the crucifix, and he uttered the words, Father, Father, why have you forsaken me? He didn't know what was going on. Most of his disciples as well didn't understand who he was. They weren't quite sure who he was. It's only in the Gospel of John, because it's the high Christology. This is where he declares himself to be kind of God and talks very confidently about. But this is the year 95. The very first writings is in the Apostle of Paul, where he didn't even seen Jesus. He only knew his brother James, and he's never seen the guy, and he talks very little about him. But he's the one who established Christianity from that point on and opened it up for Gentiles. It's not just a Jewish religion anymore. So for me, Jesus died trying to maybe I think he was thinking he was the Messiah.
I would even go so far, and I don't know this, I'm speculating here. I would go so far to say Gentiles may have joined, but it required proselytizing, which meant they had to go through a conversion process and be circumcised and follow Torah and all the above. It was only Paul that we know of. We don't know if Paul's opponents, like some of them, like Apollo, it's not like his opponents that are saying circumcised in all of his letters. We don't know if there were opponents or close people like Paul who are teaching similar messages like Paul. We don't know.
I gotta challenge something though with this whole Netzarim thing, because this is all later Christians, Jews for Jesus idea. That's not even a thing. You can go to all the texts, Josephus, Philo. Josephus talks about there's 3 sects of Judaism in the first century: Essenes, Pharisees, and Sadducees. That's it. There's no mention of Netzarim sect of Jews. I don't know where anyone gets that from. There's Ebionites. There's Christians called Ebionites. There's Christians called Marcionites. There's all these, but there's no mention of Netzarim. That's a new term brought up by Jews for Jesus now. Like that's like in the last century they made that up. There's no mention of a sect called the Netzarim anywhere.
Well, I said, people want their own Jesus.
Yeah, no, I know.
And so
you hear that all the time. Like, Yeshua Ha, they say Yeshua Ha Mosiach. Everyone knew who that was. It must be written all over the place.
Well,
no, there's none of that.
Think about
what's the same thing with the Hebrew Israelite movement, and going blah blah blah. I can't say it right. But you know what I mean.
They say what they want. They just say what they want.
When I was a Christian towards the end, I was studying eschatology, the study of last things. To give you an example, I was willing to go wherever the Bible taught me to believe, because I was that much of a fundamentalist. Jesus said he was coming back soon, like within their lifetime. And so I believed he must have, I just didn't understand how. So then I started looking at that and saying, okay, he had to have come back, but all the church is saying he's going to come back. So I was going with the text. And my point is, when that kernel of belief with what you believe at the core is there, it doesn't matter what evidence you find out. In fact, if you find out you think Jesus was an early actual Judaism, a follower of the Torah, and this is what Christianity really was, that's what I would end up becoming. Was I'm going to follow whatever it says. Oh, I need to keep kosher. I'm going to keep kosher now because Jesus taught this. That doesn't make any of that true at all. In fact, if we did find out that that's exactly what Hanny's pointing out, and I think that is the case, it's
the
Judaism.
Nazarite vow is not a sect; that's a vow. You can be a Nicene and take a Nazarite vow. You can be a Pharisee and take a Nazarite vow. It's a vow. It's not a sect. Just so you know, I saw that in the chat.
Yeah, I definitely would love to get some of the scholars on this, because there's some people who think that there's that debate on what you're discussing here and whether he was this rebel type figure of a particular movement.
Could be.
Nazareth is that term, right? Is it Nazareth or is it this or is it that? And there's people debating that.
If you look at the Essenes and how Josephus describes the Essenes as being not temple based. So, okay, now you got Christianity sort of lines up with this. They're also very obsessed with purity rites and all this like brotherly stuff and separating men and women. Okay, that probably where Christianity could have came out of. That sounds more likely to me. But you never, in any of the ancient texts, you never hear about anyone talking about Nazarene ever. Not once. I would love for someone to show me that.
Yeah, email me, Charles, Derek@MythVisionPodcast.com. Everybody, let's have our final words. I got to get off here. I got pizza inside waiting on me.
I'm still in my car.
I know.
Chicago,
people. So let's start with ladies first, though, as we go. Let's start with Magdala.
Medalia.
I don't know why.
Medalia.
Magdalene. How about that? I'm just kidding.
I was going to ask, Medalia, do you have it? Is it a Turkish background?
Well, I spell it like that just so that people can pronounce it right. It's actually Hebrew for tower. It's spelled Migdalia. So people usually go Migdalia, McDonald's, whatever. Like, so
that's actually where I was thinking.
I feel your pain.
Mary Magdalene, and actually, I think her name has a root to the tower. It's a tower or something to her name. But do you have a channel, or is there anything that you'd like to say before we let you go?
No, I'm just a follower. No, I just appreciate it. I appreciate the conversation. I really do love looking at everybody's channels and everything. I just appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in, and thank you for telling us some of your personal stuff. And maybe we could do another hangout in the future.
Oh, definitely.
Thank you. Camille?
I don't have a channel.
You need to make one, though. You got plenty to say, though. Huh?
I've heard this before. I can't help it. I like to read, and I love knowledge. And Sophia is my BFF. So, I try to glean a lot of wisdom from a lot of things. But I'm glad I popped up on here today. Derek, you and I have to talk in Messenger on a schedule on when, since, we're a little bit free now.
Yeah.
But just to everyone watching, just continue to support MythVision Podcast. Support the Patreon. If you have not signed up, please do. This is his life, okay? Same thing with Neil. Follow Neil on there, subscribe to his channel, subscribe to their Facebook pages. Support these guys because they're trying to change people's minds one video at a time, pretty much. So
thank you.
That's all I have to say.
And just a shout out for Hanny. He does the same stuff, so you can support him out. And he not only does English. Are you dealing with Arabic?
Yeah. Actually, 70% of my broadcast is in Arabic.
Wow.
Ooh, wow.
So he's dealing with a world of different kind of fundamentalism.
Yeah, the type that want to kill you.
Yeah, they will really behead you. Yeah. Let's have you, Hanny, if you will, tell us, where they can go to subscribe, support.
Well, first of all, I just want to say I've been doing this for about a year and a half, and I've had so many chats with different YouTubers. But Neil and Derek stand out for me for multiple reasons. The first thing is how human and how down to earth they are. They are real people. And that's a difficult thing to be. One of the most difficult thing to do in this life is to be yourself. It takes very long. And most people that you meet, they're not really who they are. And they become somebody else when they're on show. Yeah. But to meet people who are there off air, on air, on the phone, on the street, exactly the same, that's a rarity. Guys, you got to subscribe because these guys are just going to tell it as it is, and you'll learn while having fun, and that's a rarity. So thank you very much for having me.
And how can people support you, Hanny? Thank you.
Well, just go to Critical Faculty, which is the channel you shared. I have Michael Shermer coming in a couple of weeks. I've got Dr. Robert Price in the day after tomorrow talking about the Gospel of John. So I've got Lawrence Krauss coming on board in a couple of weeks' time. Bart Ehrman is going to come again. So I've got a few speakers coming, but I do also Arabic in case you have sort of that knowledge of that language. I do Arabic, but I do a lot of science, from quantum mechanics to evolution.
He's very science-minded. Go support our good friend Hanny for real. Critical Faculty on YouTube and Nil.
Yeah, just go up, look me up at Gnostic Informant, youtube.com/Gnostic Informant. I'm also on Facebook. I just started that one. It's brand new. I'm just posting stuff, thoughts, passages from different mythology, stuff like that. Just kind of tinkering around with that. But yeah, not really trying to change people's minds, but I'm just giving people points of view so they can step out of their own dogmatism and see things for what they are. That's all I'm doing. So,
but Neil, you are. I hate to break it to you. I know you're not trying to, but you are. And the same thing with you, dear. Yeah. You are. Just accept it. Just accept your role. All right, you're an Avenger now, okay?
Hey, you too. You did like 3 videos. You did like what, 2 videos with me or something like that?
Fall in line, soldier.
Serious. Yeah, I definitely appreciate all of you. And if anyone out there is struggling, you're not alone. There's a Discord as well. You can go down in the description. You can talk to people who are MythVision followers. Discord's a great way to communicate for a lot of people. We also have the Facebook group. So if you want to go in there and just post a post and, interact with people, you can. I have people of faith and people who aren't of faith who come and realize I am a human. I don't judge you for that at all. I would love to see people at least acknowledge and see these things and develop and mature in their lives. Yes, I do want people to change. I'm not necessarily I don't want necessarily everyone to be an atheist, okay, like me. I want them to use their own thinking skills and come to conclusions that they have found that works best for them and is the most rational and works the best in their life. And it isn't just a superstitious worldview. So with that being said, thanks to everybody who showed up. This was a fantastic panel. And don't forget, we are MythVision. Peace.
Don't any of you have the guts to play for blood?
I'm your huckleberry. That's just my game.